Good morning, everybody. Jesus Christ is risen from the dead. That means you've been paid for. That makes you immortal now. He's not going to be long. Anyway, you found Stop the White Noise with Jonathan and Meredith. I am Jonathan.
And I'm Meredith.
And I'm going to make sure I double check our sound. I didn't even do this before we started. The sound here, remember how last week I got it all back? Hey, you sound pretty good. You're here for Bible answers, your questions. Wrong order. Your questions, Bible answers, a little bit of our nonsense as we try to navigate this white noise, this crazy world, the madness, the mass formation psychosis, the zombie apocalypse, the belief that we live in the end times. But we've been living in the end times since our Lord ascended. How do you navigate end times where there is therein so much lies and deception? I guess it's always been here, but the brainwashing devices have not always been here quite the same way. Mm-hmm. I wonder if it worked the same way, like just with letters. Once upon a time, like they were just that as powerful as TV is now because you just didn't know the difference. And only by adding the ability of, mixing media, sound and sight to be able to twist what reality appears to be, that now is like, oh, wow, that's really deceptive. And before it was just like, I'm going to lie to you in a letter. And then it was like, wow, it just deceived me. And like, I didn't even know. Right. I don't know. So let's see here. We're going to do some business here right off the bat. I did all this work. You can support what we do by going to subscribestar.com or /RevFisk or patreon.com/RevFisk. Your support, your subscription helps us keep all these things going. What are all these things? Well, RevFisk.com is where you can find almost everything linked to one way or another, but there's MadChristianMondays.com. There is the Hebron Collegium, and there is A Brief History of Power. All of these things out there to help you navigate your way in the crazy. And remember, the Hebron Collegium is what brings you this show. We have a generous donor of support who has made the Hebron Collegium possible. And although, how do I say this? The Hebron Collegium gives us the technology by which we are able to now broadcast to you. And as a result of this, they are the primary supporter of this show. But in terms of our own income, not a dime. So go into RevFisk.com. No. Go into patreon.com/RevFisk or subscribestar.com/RevFisk if you like what we do. It is incredibly helpful. And look at that. I made all those words come and go. I just have to click a bunch of buttons. And there we are. All right. So we got a lot of questions today that are kind of in the same vein as our normal questioning. Mm-hmm. But I don't think we can avoid the news. I think we need to talk about the news. It's a pretty painful week in America, although I guess my biggest thing about the pain this week in America is how the media chooses which stories to cover and which ones to ignore, because the thing is there's this much pain, violence taking place in our country weekly, not always at schools. And that's where that becomes an issue. But before we go there, I remembered something this week that goes way back to like early YouTube Lutheranism, and I'm gonna have to mention this guy. And I don't always like mentioning this guy because then he gets like free rides in my newsletter, and his face is there, and he's already bigger than I am. But this guy named Brian Wolfmuller, do you remember? He still does this show. I don't want to say he used to do this show, but it used to be like one of the main things he did. It was Table Talk Radio. Do you remember that? Did you ever listen to that?
I did.
How could you stand it? If you're a fan, you know. Okay, if you're a fan, you get it. They used to play games. Mm-hmm. They would have these games that they would create, and he has always been kind of a gaming mind. I'm pretty sure they use this on Table Talk Radio, but he created this game for his confirmation class. Oh, okay. And it was called 10 Commandments in the News. And he would put news stories up, and he would ask them, which commandment is this about? And as I was pondering last week's talk about politics and can Christians talk about politics? Can pastors talk about politics? I just was reminded of that idea of 10 commandments in the news. And so I wanted to encourage everybody as we go through the White Noise Watch to kind of focus on, okay, so if this is just politics, then it won't be about one of the commandments, right? In the sense that most people may know it's politics, not religion, right? But if it's about one of the 10 commandments, now it's not politics in the sense of partisan posturing for power for no actual reason, right? I think that's what maybe people mean when they say politics, like opinions of who should be in charge, not what they should do. It's a strange thing. I keep like pushing on that one in my head. Like when someone says that's just politics, like what do they really mean by that, right? Like if you saw a cop car go by, you wouldn't say, well, that's just the police, ignore them. Like, no, there's like that's an important thing, the police. If they flash their lights, you pull over. It's the law. Mm-hmm. The politics is the law, right? And so we want to preach law and gospel. It's just so, I don't know, but they mean something else when they say that's just politics. And I'm trying to figure out what that is. I'm looking maybe you have an idea.
I have no idea, because if the law is there for us and we are created in God's image, then, and the law is written on our heart, then politics is very much so a part of our religion. Like you cannot separate the two.
Go further on that.
Well,
because there are going to be people like, that's so wrong.
Oh, really?
Religion and politics are completely different things.
Well,
never let your religion get in the way of your politics, or vice versa, something like that. It's like a talking point.
The way that my prayer is that my religion would infiltrate everything that I do, say, and think. And so if politics are part of the world I live in, the way it runs smoothly, I don't believe that I can separate my religion from politics. It's part of who I am. What I believe is going to impact what I think about what's going on around me.
What you believe is going to impact what you do?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't make any sense to me. Integrity is the word I was writing down there. That Christians, as people who believe that there is original sin, that all men are fallen, that all people are evil, curved in on themselves, self-seeking, liars. Christians are like, let's not be like that. Jesus saved us. It's not by doing good that we're going to be saved. He's already saved us by grace. And so regenerate, we can see how lying, deceiving, murdering, it's bad for everybody, ultimately. So we're like, let's not be like that. Mm-hmm. And then we live in a city with a bunch of people who don't believe that. And then they're like, no, lying, deceiving, murdering, adultery, this stuff's awesome. Okay, so you just let them do that to you? And actually, the crazy thing is I think there's some Christians like, yes, you do. That's the way. But no, I think you go out and you try to at least not be like that yourself. You be a civilization that isn't like that.
Right.
But then that gets called politics. This is where, so what you said is not really engaging what they mean when they say that's just politics. And that's what, there's this like definition they have that isn't your life in the city, that isn't the real laws. It's like some other thing. It's like sports. Like you're just cheering for that team, and so I cheer for this team, and it doesn't have an impact on reality somehow. Or even like there's too many issues to possibly pick a side or something like that. So anyway, that's where I'm still just trying to think out loud on that one. Mm-hmm. So thank you for doing that with me here.
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess I don't understand how even cheering for a sports team is going to be am I going into dangerous? Well,
there's some people out there that might beg to differ with you. I'm with you. I've abandoned sports generally myself.
Thing.
So
like, if I'm going to be a supporter of anything, what am I saying about what I'm supporting? Mm-hmm. So if I'm supporting a sports team that in their spare time they are doing lawless deeds, like they're drug cartels.
That's elite,
like,
but yeah.
Really?
But there's a lot of political posturing by sports teams in the name of woke agendas, which are not necessarily political things so much as sexual licentiousness.
Well, right. I just didn't want to go into
but yeah, no, you're the
PG-13 kind of
Drug
conversation.
cartels. Drug cartels is just, they exist, but
what can I say that won't get us turned off?
Nothing. Don't worry about it. Just don't use the V word.
Okay, well, just
inoculation retranslated.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, with the other V word also, my friend. But no, yeah.
Okay.
Don't wax eloquent, right?
Right.
Can I say it that way?
So, there have been clothing companies that we've kind of been like, you know what? I don't really know if I want to have their logo on my clothes because of what they stand for. I thought about that as I was putting that shirt away.
Evil.
But
to me, the irony is just is too much so, because this campaign, the Witness campaign, is long gone, and it was about like, I was there to see the great moment when I achieved or whatever. But it's kind of like, no, like the Christian Witness. But anyway, yeah, I'm with you. Not wearing logos.
So how could I even? My point is, we just can't be separated from who we are.
Yes.
And who we are is part of the body of Christ. And so if that is really pumping as thickly through our veins as we say it is, then it's going to be very challenging for us to not have it impact all of what we see and think and believe as we encounter it in our daily life.
A little leaven leavens the whole lump, and salt that has lost its saltiness is worth for nothing but throwing away. And so Christians are to be the leaven in the world. You are the light of the world. You are the leaven, and the salt of the world. But if the salt loses its saltiness, again, it's good for nothing. So what are we here to be? Salt and light, and that is going to look different, and that is going to impact your neighborhood, and that would be the polis, P-O-L-I-S, city, from which we get the word politics. So, yeah.
So I agree.
Yeah.
I guess what it is what I'm saying. I think
my wife. Why would you not agree? The question again is, what are they really I want to know what they're really saying.
I don't know.
You can't talk
confusing.
politics, because that will help me understand their point of view better when I realize, they're not using the word like as English. They're using it as like Babel English instead, right? It's gobbledygook now, but it means something to them. It's very reasonable to them. They have it all thought through, but it isn't connecting with my own thinking. So, all right. Well, so we already mentioned the shooting in Texas. If you have not heard of this yet, God bless you. You don't spend much time on the internet, and honestly, it's probably better for you that way. Just the truth. Like, who needs the news? But it's out there. And of course, it is impacting the national dialogue, because every time that there is an event like this, the anti-Second Amendment party, that is the anti-Constitution party, you can figure out which party that is, goes on the offensive in trying to take federal power that the Constitution has prohibited, right? So like one of the main ideas of the Constitution was, hey, we need to make sure federal power is limited, otherwise they take all of it and then they steal from us. And that was like the idea, and I'm not going to argue that it's even possible to have that work. All I'm going to say is you can watch the history of the United States being the federal government doing the exact thing that the Constitution was trying to prevent and taking more and more power, and they're continuing to do it now. Of course, by blaming the gun rather than by blaming the shooter. And this is really a fascinating thing, that it's the weapon, not the man who wielded the weapon, who's the problem. And then it's if it is the man, although there's news about the guy, but if it is the man, it's hardly ever going to be the godless culture of death society filled with licentious liars that are the problem. That can't be what it is. So there was I don't know if I've even got this tweet up here to share. This kind of getting disjointed here, but there was a bit of news this week trying to say that there have been 27 shootings at schools this year. Not true. There have been 16 since 1966 in terms of like mass shootings at schools with shooter who's not part of the school. This kind of thing, like what happened in Texas. 16 since 1966. First one in 1966 in the U.S. Before 1966, by the way, you can find pictures of like girls at school in the gym practicing rifle shooting. Like they brought their rifle to school to learn how to do it safely. By the way, Switzerland still does this, to my understanding. In Switzerland, you have to own a gun. Why are all the bankers meeting in Switzerland. It's just a fascinating way the world is upside down. But anyway, so 1966, this starts. Of course, there's the idea of the copycat. The more that the news says something, the more likely there's going to be someone out there who then copies it and all this. But what was my first thought was what changed in 1966, or what changed shortly before 1966? What was in the water that was really making America a different place? I mean, this is before when people talk about the 60s and the craze of the 60s, that's 67, 68, 69, and into the early 70s. It's not the early 60s. But it was all building. It was moving in a direction. So what are the major spiritual trends that are taking place in the mid-60s? And the one that, I kind of started searching around for it a little bit, and I had a hunch. But I didn't realize it'd be so, direct, which is that 1965, legalization of birth control on a federal level.
That's what I was going to say, but I was like, would that really impact shootings in schools?
Correlation is not causation.
Okay.
So just because two things are near each other doesn't mean one caused the other. Although it doesn't mean it didn't. Okay, so you can't really say either way. Just correlation, not causation, doesn't mean it had nothing to do with it. But what's in the water?
It's definitely
you have a society moving as a whole into a place in which they publicly say, we don't want you.
Right. Yeah.
And then that same society, some kid's growing up in that society for 8-10 years before this even happens, but he's in a society which they don't want him, and they're trying to make that happen, and they're hearing that shouted, and he begins to think, oh, life is worthless.
Right. There's less meaning in life.
So I'm not going to say correlation is causation, but I will say that if you read Romans 2, where God talks about giving people over to their sin so they can destroy themselves based upon their own decision-making, it sure just kind of looks like that. Culture of death is going to raise up people of death. At least 276 children were shot in the city of Chicago in 2021. 1 year, one city. Chicago has 100% gun control. It is one of the most locked down, anti-gun, you can't have guns, no Second Amendment rights places on the planet. Of course, they will say, well, those guns are coming from places where you can get the guns and they're coming in illegally. So apparently with the border of the United States being what it is, locked down so tightly, guns will stop coming into the U.S. as soon as we make guns illegal for citizens to own. The argument is moot, I think. The argument is a religious argument probably on both sides. And my point here is that this is a spiritual problem. You can have guns and no one shoots them. It's possible. It really is. You can have guns and people only shoot them at deer, wolves, and targets. It's possible. It really is. The reason people are shooting guns at people is because of hatred for their neighbor. Why are we developing hatred for our neighbor? And don't blame everybody else. Look inside a little bit first. Ask Jesus for forgiveness for being part of such a wretched country, and then realize that when we detached the United States from Christendom, it doesn't mean everyone before that was a good, solid Christian and believed, but the laws which drove the virtue systems in their heads, they were driven by an actual reality that involved the good of the other. And we have now attached ourselves to an actual reality that involves only despising and using of the other. And so eventually, yes, of course, it's going to turn into wretched violence. And Chicago is a great example of that. Meanwhile, just this same week in Chicago, there was a mass shooting. I think it was 7 were shot, 2 died, so it wasn't quite as big a deal, and it certainly wasn't at a school. But this one didn't make as much noise. Why? Well, because it's gang activity, black gang activity down in the city. So that's not going to tug at the hearts and get us to say more gun control. And in fact, they can't have more gun control in Chicago. They can't. Right? So they just point the finger out and say, it was from others far away. They brought the guns in, and then they blame parents. Parents aren't active in the kids' lives. Hey, actually, that's right. But why is the government a government that is not supporting parents in kids' lives? Fatherlessness being a big thing. In fact, the guy in Texas, one of the big pieces of news coming out is that he had not seen his father for quite some time. His father was sometimes in his life, but effectively an absentee father. Lived with his grandma and very poor working mother. And one of the things, I don't know if everyone's heard this, before he went and shot the kids, he shot his grandma. He shot his grandma.
Whoa.
There's also text messages and chat room stuff that the police have access to of him saying he was going to do so 10 days prior. How do they have this? And there's a lot of questions about where were the cops on this. And I'm kind of a back the blue kind of guy, but it's smelly. I'll agree that it's a little smelly down there with this whole thing, which again, with the need to move an anti-Second Amendment that is anti-constitution, that is remove your human rights party forward. I'm not beyond a deceptive, lying government that controls brainwashing machines cheating. And that's where A Brief History of Power really comes in. I mean, you got to listen to that show and go back and dig into some of the stuff about CIA, FBI that Dr. Kuntz has told us about. I think the great episode on the Branch Davidian cult was really fascinating. Not that I think the Branch Davidians were a good theological group. It's David Koresh, Texas stuff. Do you remember this? You might have been like an infant almost. It was like
I don't think
they were like a cult, like a Christian-ish cult, who then built a compound.
Oh,
Waco.
Yeah, Waco.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you remember that.
Yeah, I remember that.
So the history of that, if you can set aside the wow, they were weird, and look at the wait, how'd the fire start? Wait, how come they all died? There's a lot of U.S. government involved. Yeah, there's a lot of U.S. government involved. Of course, they were like a paramilitary group too. I mean, they were prepping.
Wow.
This group. So prepping for what? End times, weird Christian stuff. Yeah. So anyway, I think it's pretty straightforward. This tweet says it very well. I don't know who Samuel Say is, but some people buy guns to murder children. Some people buy guns to protect children. People who buy guns to murder children are criminals. They will break any law that bans a gun. People who buy guns to protect children, however, will no longer be able to protect the children. So that's straightforward. See, it was a Border Patrol. The news is so sketchy on the Texas thing. It was a Border Patrol agent that finally got in and shot the guy. The cops did not go in. You have the local cop, I don't know if he's the sheriff head, on CNN saying how the reason the cops didn't go in for over an hour was because the cops might have gotten shot. Which there's a lot of talk about, isn't that your job? I mean, it's a hard job. Wow. That's why I respect the job. Is because you run toward danger, not away, right? That's the idea. You have parents that are trying to go in, and the cops are stopping the parents from going in. You got parents jumping fences, trying to save their kids, right? I mean, it's really just all over kinds of bad. But just imagine every teacher is strapped and trained to shoot a pistol. And this is the Republican talking point. I don't actually think this is right necessarily, because I think it should be not just the teachers. But imagine that all people are trained to have a weapon. You know how far this guy gets? He doesn't get very far. Some crazy person shooting. I mean, he walked around outside the building for 12 minutes shooting, just kind of shooting. He walked into an open, unlocked door in an elementary school. What? Wow. That's not how elementary schools work. What's going on? Anyway, the point is, I think that protecting the innocent is important. And that's why I don't think that you can just say, you can't like guns and be pro-life. No, really. I like guns because I'm pro-life, and I think the innocent should be defended. The same reason I think you shouldn't be allowed to take some weapon and brutalize an infant in the womb, right? Is the same reason I think you shouldn't be able to do it with a gun, and that everyone should be able to stop you once you try. I think that's right. I think protecting the innocent is good. Again, it's just, no one's using reason. They're just shouting at each other and trying to move the ball. And the ball does move further and further toward tyranny because we live on planet Earth where we're fallen, and you shouldn't expect paradise shy of Jesus' return. So I think that's the last one on gun control and the shooting. I don't know if you wanted to, I talked a lot there.
We can move forward.
All right.
That's very sad.
It's incredibly sad. Well, so here's a couple pieces of news. According to... this one's from Fox, but world has 10-week supply of wheat, expert tells UN Security Council. This is seismic. This was this week. I don't have a date here on it. May 22nd, so a week ago. So there's 10 weeks of wheat left in the world supply chain, and then there'll be a bubble that is like a vacuum space. Doesn't mean there'll never be wheat again, but 7 years of bumper crops are on the way, and then 7 years of not so much. The fat or the skinny cows going to eat up the fat cows. That moment, the UN says, is coming, and they're not alone. Here you have, well, I guess this is a UN guy too. This is the director of the UN World Food Program, saying that a devastating global hunger crisis is at our doorstep. It is all hands on deck to pull millions back from the brink of famine. We need everyone to help save lives today, from world leaders to the private sector and the billionaire. Now, how?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
like,
Well,
okay.
the world, listen to the World Economic Forum when the WEF tells you what to do and to like get an electric vehicle and then get your vaccine, your inoculation. Just do what they say. I don't know. You're going to have to eat bugs. That's kind of been a push for a while, that if you want protein, bugs, go vegan, meat's bad, climate change, all this kind of stuff. It's all one package. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean there's not actually a food crisis coming.
Right.
That doesn't mean that it isn't a manufactured food crisis. It may not be a manufactured food crisis. It could just be incompetence on the part of our leadership. You either have malice or incompetence going, though. One way or the other. You can't have, like, they're not doing a good job. That is obvious if there's a food crisis of this proportion about to take place. In a time such as ours, where we could be feeding everybody incredibly well if we weren't wasting all of the land on, like, Fruit Loops, for pity's sakes, and vegan
getting angry
soy pizza nonsense. Well, I mean, again, it's not even like the debate between, like, hey, should you eat fruits and vegetables or should you eat just meat? Like, okay, I like this debate, but let's just set that debate over here. That's not this debate. This is like should you eat cardboard made of poison that destroys the land, but it's really good for the people who make it? Like, they can make so much money on it every time. They can hand over fist. Exchange, you give them all of your goods and they give you poison that hurts you, and then later they can sell you medicine because they are the same corporations.
Yeah, it's gross.
Food shortage coming, warns the IMF. That's the International Monetary Fund. So the banks are on it. They're letting you know the food shortage is coming. So when will this be? I mean, the idea is this is sometime this fall. The idea that this is going to centralize in, say, Africa, India, kind of the places you think of as not third world or third world, but almost third world. Bangladesh. I don't know if I'm just throwing names out there, but Southeast Asia area. This has to do a little bit with Russia being a major wheat producer for the world, but India also is, and then they're keeping their wheat rather than selling it because they're having shortages. So, the place where this is going to be the worst is probably not in your middle class backyard. However, the prices are going to go up. Shelves are not always going to have stuff on them. Is it going to turn into mass starvation? I sure hope not. Although, again, the collapse of Argentina in the 90s, which was a financial collapse brought about by the inflating of the currency until the point where it no longer was any good at all. Like, it started to spiral out of control. They went from being a first world country to, like, mass starvation in 2 to 3 weeks. And then that lasted for 2 to 3 months. And then after that, rebuilding started to happen, but a lot of people had died. You can go look it up. 90s. And so, it can happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't want it to happen. I'm praying that it doesn't happen. Having some rice and beans in your cupboard may be a good idea. Having some canned foods, right? That's always kind of a good idea in the event that there's a power outage. There's rolling blackouts warned for the whole country electrically this summer too. That was a crazy news story. I don't want to believe that one at all, but it's from Bloomberg. Anyway, like, it's always a good idea to have a little extra on hand, right? So,
and what's the cause of these rolling blackouts? Like, just random. Just so you know, it's like a tornado.
I didn't say.
Just comes.
Infrastructure.
Not because we created the electricity or anything.
We're definitely not using certain types of fuel in the same way. And as summer comes, there will be higher demand on the grid. Certain areas will have more issues than others. California, I mean, they've been doing this every summer for years now in certain areas. They shut down all their nuclear plants, and that's where most of their power came from. And so I don't know where the U.S. one is. I don't know if we're actually in all I'm saying is, like, they're shouting about how it's going to get really bad. They, not me, they're shouting about how it's going to get really bad summer into fall. And I think maybe at this point we should not trust them, but believe them, if that makes sense. Like, they're forecasting what they are going to do. The question is, when it happens, what are they going to say? They're going to say, well, give us more power, stay home, we're going to be in charge. Oh, by the way, monkeypox, but we'll come back to monkeypox in a moment. But first, I want to just total left, but not a left at all. So a lot of this information from this week was coming out of the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos, Switzerland. You can go check out their website and see how wonderful a group they are. It's basically international banks coming together to control nation-state politics through the training and placement of high-level people into those political administrations, so that kind of they'll have like it's kind of like having a fraternity, and then you go out and you work somewhere, and you're more committed to your fraternity than to that place, and you kind of work for your fraternity in that place. Yeah. So I mean, they're really open about this. This isn't a conspiracy theory. They tell you this is what they're doing. You can watch all the video of it. And then you had very famous politicians that were there this week. You had the CEO of Pfizer was there. All this stuff. But my biggest question out of the whole week is, so Davos, Switzerland is this little tiny town where this all takes place in Switzerland, little tiny. It's a small city in Switzerland. And they, but the World Economic Forum is not the city of Davos, the town of Davos. It's separate, but the World Economic Forum does have its own police force, even though they're for disarmament and no guns for you. They have their own police force, and this is the badge of their police force. And I wouldn't know why it's got demons eating crystals on it. I think that's just one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. Like a lot of times you see like there's a star, right? Or there's some kind of like shield or something. And that's just scary.
So they're not goats. They're not mountain goats. They're demons.
How do you see a mountain goat?
Well, they have little tails, little tiny tails.
Oh, they could be like dinosaurs.
And then they have
I see the dinosaur.
really
It's a dinosaur.
legs.
You know what though? You know what that looks like? If you want to make that an animal with these being the legs and this is a tail.
No, that's not the tail.
Where's your tail?
The tail's the little teeny tiny nubbin in the back. There
That's
you go.
the
Ding,
tail.
You found it.
Oh goodness.
Isn't that
There's
the
a nubbin.
tail? And then
they are. They're ibexes.
they're ibex. Okay. Whew.
Okay. That makes more. I feel better. The crystals still scare me.
Well, right.
And you don't see the demon.
No.
Face.
Oh.
Mouth. Weird horns. It also looks like Guyver.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. Just for fun. Okay, but I get it. Okay, but okay. I feel better. You saved it. Now you've ruined my Twitter. Now we can trust the World Economic Forum. They're just about
animal rights.
Yeah, you're right. Steambox. Gag. Animal rights. Monkeypox. Mentioned it already. If you haven't heard about monkeypox, it's kind of gotten quiet again for a moment, even though I believe it's Quebec, I forget, but one of the territories of Canada is already moving toward requiring inoculation for monkeypox.
Wow, that's what it looks like.
Well, here's a funny thing. I mean, look at this. So this is from one site talking about monkeypox.
Okay.
This is from another site.
And what is it talking about?
Shingles. So I mean, they're not that different actually. Chickenpox, shingles, all this, right? But just look at the pictures. This is the way the news works. Look, they grab a picture.
The same picture. Wow, guys.
I saw a story from a I follow an India news station that it's amazing how woke they are for being India, but
is it though?
Well, they're owned. They're paid for. There's so much news about the U.S. and all the things that should happen here. It's kind of weird. And this one was like on the shooting and the guns.
Okay.
And the headline was something like, it's so easy to buy a gun in the U.S. that it's all these other things are harder than that. It's not easy to buy a gun in Illinois, I tell you that. But the picture has this wall of like armaments, and like they look like terrifying military weaponry, and they all have a small orange plastic piece on the front, every single one of them. So like if they don't know, and they don't know, but they grab this picture. So the person doing this grabs this picture. The people reading it don't know the difference. They think these are all actual weapons, and that's what you could use to walk into Walmart and grab one off the wall.
Just for those of you who don't know, airsoft rifles, BB guns.
Yeah.
Like
a toy gun has an orange plastic piece on the front of it to mark it as a toy gun. That's the point. And it's illegal, I believe, to take them off. So anyway, here the point again is with monkeypox, like, I don't know, is that what monkeypox looks like? I'm sure it doesn't look great. I know that it's something you recover from. I know it doesn't kill you. It's a lot more like chickenpox. I know that much of the initial discovery of this has been in certain sexually licentious and sometimes contrary to nature, meaning non-evolutionary capacity, sexual intercourse. Did I say that well enough to avoid YouTube?
I don't know, but you did a good job.
It's showing up is weird, to be sure. What are they going to do with it is the real question. Is it just going to go away? Is it just more kind of pushing us forward? I don't think I shared. Yeah, I didn't share. There was a lady being interviewed at the World Economic Forum talking about how, not monkeypox per se, but that we just have to be ready for the next pandemic. There's going to be more pandemics. There's no way there won't be more pandemics because climate change. And that was her reasoning, is that climate change is going to cause the pandemics. It's a story they're using to scare you, to move you.
Wow.
It's a story they're using to scare you, to move you. The question is this going to become something bigger or not? Again, just know your facts. Monkeypox and other animal pox are all very closely related. And unless someone has done research to make them into something more than they are, they're not a reason to lock down society, never let your children go anywhere, and jab them with experimental gene technologies. It's not really that. I mean, it looks gross. It definitely looked gross, that picture. And other pictures I've seen, it's like chickenpox on steroids. Right?
Yeah, it's such a different mindset to take your sickness and quarantine. Whereas when we were little, I know that if somebody got chickenpox at school, they had to stay home. But at the same time, sometimes people were like, hey, my kid hasn't had it yet. Can we have a play date?
I heard that didn't always work out so well. I think
probably not.
So there were places where that caused problems. I don't know. I mean,
I know. I mean, I had it and it was kind of fun. I remember
it. Yeah, you watched TV. And
I watched Robin Hood with the little foxes.
I remember watching TV with chickenpox too. Yeah,
over and over again.
And I got
not diverse
a little.
movies,
there was a little medicine that had to be put on each one to stop them from. It was probably just hydrocortisone.
Oh man, I just sat in oatmeal.
I remember oatmeal bath.
That's what I did.
Yeah. Right. So here's that energy thing. Vast swath of U.S. at risk of summer blackouts. Regulator warns.
Oh, and look at how
drought,
the sun and the moon are impacted by these blackouts.
Plant closures, supply chain woes threaten the electric grid. So, okay, 10 Commandments in the news. Christians, do we need to know about this and talk about this? So, when the microphone system doesn't work at church, when the air conditioner doesn't work at church, I mean, it's not going to kill us, right? But this is just it. So you live in an area where it gets really hot and you got elderly. Oh wait, they can actually get killed by this. Yeah, they really can, and then disappear for 2 or 3 weeks because they don't have kids around, and so no one even knows. So I don't know. And again, if you're losing electricity, it's not just a matter of I can't
microwave my
popcorn. Stuff. You may not be able to get water out of your well. That's one thing. There's other things that won't happen. The stores close down. They can't run credit cards. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that possibly could happen. So to me, this falls under the commandment 7, thou shalt not steal, not in the sense of they're stealing the electricity, but when the electricity is gone, it will be harder to care for your neighbor with stuff. Stealing is about thou shalt not steal is not just about not taking someone else's stuff. It's about sharing your stuff with others. And if you don't have stuff, you can't share it. If you can't buy stuff, you can't share it. And so thou shalt not steal is about buy, actually, too. So, trade. That's all the category of theology it comes under. Okay. So that's where I would see this impacting the way we enact the 7th commandment. Yeah,
that's good. Monkeypox. 6th commandment. No.
Well, you're right about that, though. Oh, goodness. Careful, honey.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's true.
Didn't say the V
it's
word.
True. Well, I actually brought that up with somebody who I just met them, and they're politically active, probably in the same way that I am in a lot of ways, thinking the same kinds of things, but an older lady. And I brought that point up right away, and she was like, well, that's not all true. She got really uncomfortable talking about it. I was like, well, it's what they say. So there was a lot of work being done to make sure everyone knew it wasn't really about that.
Oh.
Even though it was. Yeah. So same people who are saying that you can't go out to the park because you'll spread COVID are saying that stopping large gatherings aimed at men coming together to have loose interchange with each other won't stop this.
So
that's not the answer.
Cancel your orgies and then
No,
we'll be fine.
But it said they came out very clearly and they said that won't work. And that's the wrong way to do it, and that's oppressive. Okay, same people.
Game on.
Gaslighting. They don't care. It's just about shouting loud and moving. The Biden administration announced in May that K through 12 schools must allow boys into girls' bathrooms in order to qualify for federal funds used to pay for school lunches. Politics? Just politics.
Oh, no.
It's just politics. I'm just politicking right now. I'm just pushing my politics.
K through 12?
In order to qualify for federal money for school lunches. So all the poor kids.
Oh, my.
So we won't let you feed the poor kids if you don't let the boys look at the girls in the bathroom.
Okay, just so you guys all know, like nothing happens. We don't even look at each other. Like there's stalls. It's very private.
Things will happen when the boys are in there.
It will.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very disturbing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
I just stated the obvious. But
no, that's good. I'm glad you're upset. This isn't about Joe Biden. Like I don't care. I think the old guy. I care more about Biden's I care more about his son's laptop if I'm going to talk about an actual guy. This is about okay, are you ready? Do your kids go to public school? Do your kids go to public school? Are you ready for your daughters? How are you training them? Are you talking to them about how to deal with boys who are going to take advantage of this? Because someone's going to be like, well, but the trans boys really, okay. They might not even be the problem, although some of them we know they are. From historically, you can see that there's like a back and forth thing that happens. But no, there's going to be boys who are just going to be like, oh no, I'm a girl. No, I swear. And then they're going to lie to do this.
Or they're just going to go in because they can, which...
You got it. You got it.
Yeah.
So if you're... talk to your kids. Talk to your kids. Warn them. Here's the little bit of good news. Although, again, Supreme Court was supposed to maybe release some info on Roe versus Wade this week, and nothing happened. And I just must have had the wrong lead on that one. But Oklahoma signed into law the most restrictive abortion laws in the country. It is
Thank
illegal.
You, Oklahoma.
It is illegal. Texas, you cannot do it after 6 weeks. So Texas
is that trying. What that means? Because I thought it was negative 6 weeks, and I was like, that's not possible.
I think
so
it's
there you go.
Yeah, it's from 0 to 6 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Texas has it illegal. It's after 6 weeks. Excuse me. From 0 to 6 weeks, you can do it, and then after that, and then you see it kind of goes up from there. And of course, Illinois, you can kill a viable baby, and so forth. Oregon and New Mexico and Colorado have no restrictions. 0 restrictions. So, and those are over there too. What's the yellow 24 weeks? So, this is where what they're doing though, technically Roe versus Wade still means they can't pass this law, but the reason they're doing this is because they know that's coming. But that's
so sad.
It is sad, but this is also what states' powers are supposed to be for. This was kind of an original concept in the United States, was that the federal government didn't make all the decisions. Rather, locally, you could decide. And so if you had a state filled with people who were like, let's not kill babies, they could decide not to kill babies. They didn't have to be forced to allow people to kill babies.
Yeah.
That little good news coming out of the world of nonsense right there. So, So, what do you got for us this week, my friend? Anything?
No.
Fun stuff? Nothing.
I have absolutely nothing. It
Too much
has
dog.
been a full
Too much
life.
dog. Yeah.
I am full. I wrote a letter to a friend this week. It took me 2 different days of sitting down and trying to do it. And then it was done. And it took me 3 more days to get that letter in the mail.
Wow. That's pretty rough.
That's full. So, yeah. Quiet moment. That was a really quiet.
I'm just putting our little advertisement back
go.
up. People maybe just see it.
Playing with the computer.
Full life. Well, I mean, try to think
yeah.
of...
So this is the good thing. The Hebron is up and running, even though our official start date is June 1st. We have 2 fellows so far and more to come. But that has been such a gift to me. It has been a blessing to share knowledge that I have with these guys just about I don't know. Well, yesterday it was how to clean a shower that has a glass door. And And the coolest part was that we didn't use chemicals. I was able to show him how to do it with just how to do the cleaning with just, we ended up using baking soda and vinegar mixed into a paste. And the first lesson, the first comment was, how do you make a paste? What is a paste? And I was like, what we used to use in kindergarten. And he's like, I'm like, oh, yeah, you didn't. You had Elmer's glue your whole life.
Yes.
So
me too.
You didn't have paste?
That's what they called Elmer's glue. They called it paste.
Okay, so in kindergarten, they would give us this little teeny tiny Dixie cup of, looked like toothpaste, but it was like thick stuff. And you had to use a popsicle stick to scoop it out and then smear it onto your stuff. It wasn't drippy and runny like Elmer's glue.
It was, though.
And then there were those kids that were like eating it.
Well, I mean, isn't paste like what you put on your teeth? Like paste.
Yeah, so like our toothpaste that we use is more gel-like, but there is the thicker kind. So the kind in school was like thick.
Okay, so you had to make a thick paste.
We had to make a thick paste.
In order to clean?
To clean the shower, and then the shower door, it has a glass door. And so we were talking about how to get like the water spots and the hard water spots off and stuff. And this fellow is amazing. He put his all into it and cleaned the shower so well. Like the door, we were laughing about it because we're like, people are going to just walk through the door because they're going to not know it's there. It's so clean and so streak free. So yeah, it was fun to experience that. And then also getting to introduce people to like yard work and planting, experiencing with them their first ever. Like, this is the first time I've ever mowed the lawn. That's so cool that we got to be there
to teach you to do it,
to watch you
so,
and
like,
do it with you.
Home
That's
ownership,
so fun.
home ownership / self management / is just taking care of your life skills that someone can get all the way through high school and well into college and not have.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so being able to put those together, I'm excited by, I put together the reading schedule for June, just so the, Hebron Collegium has a number of avenues that the education will take. It is going to be in part self-directed, in part coaching, in part, do you want to go online and take classes online at the local school? Because you can actually do that too and finish your degree at the same time. So without having to pay rent, which is quite a deal. I honestly don't understand why we haven't heard a little more about this, but I get it. It's out of the box and all that too. But
they're just waiting for the amazing pictures that are going to be coming onto the website.
They will be coming.
So.
Yeah. The table's shipping this week, by the way, too, or next week. Yeah, this week. Yeah. So
that's so fun. So fun. So all the furniture is coming like all landing, at one time because, well, shipping.
Well, and building the library, which is not just a theological library, but it's a self-control library. Let's call it that. It's a good literature and fiction library. It's a historic sources library. There's a whole 2 shelves that are like Dr. Kuntz recommends. You'll be smarter if you read these books. So
anyway, curriculum you were talking about.
Oh yeah, the reading schedule. So like one of the heartbeats of this entire thing is it's a Bible school. We're going to read the Bible together. I remember learning about or hearing about an evangelical one of these back before I became a Lutheran, where I guess they do this. I don't know. Like, you just go somewhere and you live there for a year and you all read the Bible. And the guy's like, we read the Bible 3 times that year. It was basically all we did every day was read the Bible, talk about it. And then I don't know, they had to walk around and eat or something, but like, and I don't, not accredited or anything like that. So that's sort of the genesis of this a little bit is, well, what happened if you have a group of guys together that are not reading maybe the Bible 3 times in a year, but maybe you read just about the whole Bible in a year together, the same readings every day while living together and studying other things on your own. What would that do for you spiritually? And so putting together the readings for June, beginning that process, initially I was like, oh, we'll just use the chronological one that you've been using. But then I looked at it and it's like Genesis, and then Job forever. Like, we're not going to start just straight into Job.
Well, you read right through Job, yeah.
I know.
Honestly, I love where it falls in the Genesis reading. So as somebody who's done it, it was good.
And since I actually believe Job is Melchizedek,
right,
I'm not opposed to that location. But like there's no explanation of this. It just kind of falls out of the sky, and then you're going to end up having to discern. And you go straight into needing to discern liars who tell really good lies that are in fact mostly truth, like 99%. And so, like, it's just not where I want to
The third time you do it, then it's like, oh, I'm ready for this.
I'm ready for Job.
Okay, now I can, ask more questions as I'm reading.
Yeah.
First time, it is kind of just like, the first time you read the Bible anyway, you're just reading the words. There isn't a lot of meaning as you read it.
That's what I'm really hoping, that this lectionary I'm working on will improve the odds of.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but like having it make some sense while it's happening. So rather than just read, it's about 3 chapters a day, because that's about what the other one was on. But actually, it's a little more if you add the Psalms, about 4 chapters a day.
Yeah.
Rather than just read, so I'm going to read the Bible in a year. Genesis, Job, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. Like we're doing, in the first month, you're going to read the whole book of Genesis, the whole book of Romans, part of John, and you'll be getting splices of the Psalms. You'll have Proverbs 1 through 9 entirely read, and that'll be read every month. And then you'll be Proverbs 10 and 11 also will have been read. So you get a whole picture. You get the life of Jesus through John up to just before he goes to the cross. You get Paul explaining why you should be a Christian in the book of Romans, and tying it, in fact, to the created order in the fall. Romans 1, 2, 3 are all about the fall, which you just watch happen right in front of you. It's really cool. I'm excited to see how it ties together. I'm sure there are going to be moments where like, why is that reading there? But like...
because you're reading through the Bible and you have to read it eventually.
But sometimes, there's a couple you read the book of Jude too. Jude's going to be read. It's only 1 chapter.
Oh, that's a hard one.
But gets thrown in. There was a spot that needed it, and the reading before was about false teachers. So it's like, well,
that works.
That's what it's about. So I'm super excited about that reading schedule and seeing it play out. And I had a lot more fun putting it together than I thought I would. I thought it was going to be like one of these kind of tedious tests. And it just kind of, it's fun. Oh, and you're going to read Psalm 119. Oh, and so every day, part of it is the Psalm 119 plan, which is 8 verses of Psalm 119 every day. Mm-hmm. Except there's only 23. There's only 23 letters. There's 22 verses, or not verses, choruses, sections. I don't know there's stanzas of Psalm 119. So that left 8 days. And so I was like, okay, what could I put in for those 8 days? Mm-hmm. And it's all the songs in Revelation. Oh. You're going to like it. You're going to like it. I think you're going to like it a lot. The smoke of her fire goes up.
Yeah, I'm going to join them doing it.
Yeah.
So I'm excited too.
Yeah, I'm excited about doing it too. So we can probably post that somewhere and share that once we get
the Hebron website.
Oh yeah, wait, hold on. like HebronCollegium.com. Yeah, we could probably try to do that. That's a good idea. Okay, that's good. See, you had something to say.
I did.
Yeah.
Nothing prepared, but
training these guys in the life skills. You have so much like home ec knowledge. And while it's like, well, it's not that big a deal. It's just, I'm like, no, but see, nobody knows. It's all been lost. And I don't want to be like, hey, Meridith, write a book about home ec. That's maybe not going to work. But honestly, passing on these skills, we're trying to do it to our kids, but we need this. We need this badly.
Well, the fun part was that we had actually stained the porcelain sink with the cast iron. So we use cast iron at the Hebron, and there is a little learning curve when you start using cast iron, like switching over from non-stick to cast iron. There's different cleaning, cooking, and storage kind of tricks to make it work and easy. And so cast iron had been left in this white porcelain sink twice. And I was like, oh, nuts. But there is an answer. So I did Google it. I cheated. I used whatever information I could find from Google, but there was a site.
Not quite cheating. It's just not always trustworthy.
I just didn't pull it out of my own brain.
I see.
And they suggested, like I said, making a paste out of the vinegar and baking soda and then scrubbing. And this one student is so diligent that he sat there and he scrubbed, like you're supposed to scrub it and then let it sit for 30 minutes, but he scrubbed it for 30 minutes. Like it was clean. There was not a single rust mark left. I was so proud of him.
Yeah, gotta be praised for that. That's good. It's exciting, and again to watch what this initial development year turns into, and to be ready next year with pictures and kind of an establishment to encourage you or your son to take a year off of college, to take a year before college, to take the year after college, and come dig into the scriptures with just a good Lutheran Church Missouri Synod church next door, and a little bit of life direction, like. One of the questions one of them had, because he had just finished his schooling as in prep to be a Lutheran teacher, and so he's just finishing his first year of Lutheran teaching. Isn't my life direction already set? Didn't I already choose? And like what he's found in conversation is, there's a lot of things I could think about. There's a lot of decisions I need to make, I don't have to have this pattern in my life, always be this pattern in my life. And I can learn Hebrew. Oh, I'm excited about teaching Hebrew too. We're going to teach Hebrew. This two of them want Hebrew, and I can't wait to get into that. That'll be Wednesday afternoons after we pray and have Bible study at church. It's fun to watch this come together.
Yeah, it really is. And I think about the common desire for young men once they graduate high school, or even maybe in the midst of college, there's this wanderlust. Like they want to go to Europe. They want to do some sort of big trip by themselves. And I don't know. I don't think that I would be as excited about that as a parent to be like, okay, yeah, go do a trip in another country, especially right now.
Not these days.
And so this is kind of that type of an opportunity where you can come and get a little of that independent spirit itched, and then also as a parent know that there's structure that is receiving them, and they're going to come away not just having tasted all the beers in
No, this is not sowing your wild oats. There's no sowing of wild oats going on. Not at all. Someone brought up my Melchizedek comment. Gordon Nauman, pastor, said, interesting, Job might be Melchizedek. I think Luther theorizes Shem as Melchizedek. Yeah, like we really don't know. But my surmise, my guess, which is I've never seen anyone else write this, so that means I'm probably wrong, but I think it makes sense at the same time, is that Melchizedek is Job. Job is Melchizedek. His story was an oral tradition that was handed down. Some of his words, many of his words were handed down. But then it is Solomon who takes the story and the true history of Melchizedek and then crafts it into the play, the drama, the delivery of what Job actually is as a book. So I think Job is written by Solomon about Melchizedek the way that Julius Caesar is written by Shakespeare. So if you're like, Fisk is saying it's not real. No. Have you read Julius Caesar? He's not making it up. It's not lies, right? However, it is he has an artistic license as he does this, like he does with Song of Songs. What are you going to say? Song of Songs isn't true? Okay. I mean, you're thinking weird. So that's what I think. I could be wrong. I think it's inspired without error. You should believe every word in it and all that. So, but it seems to all make it make sense. And I give Solomon too much credit? Maybe. It was the dinner table conversation with the guys last night was a little bit about who is Solomon? Right? I mean, he's the son of David. He's the king in Israel. His name means man of peace. And he left behind a book on how to be wise. So wait. Who really did that? Solomon? Or like the true Solomon, the one who's greater than Solomon, before he even came, left that book for himself to find as a man and then use and then teach from and then leave for you as well. So if you're not reading the Proverbs, the reign of the man of peace, his words as son of David, because it's not Jesus or something, you're missing This book is like basic instructions before leaving Earth, that kind of nonsense. Like the Bible's the whole Bible is not basic instructions before leaving Earth. And I'm not going to say before leaving Earth, but like Proverbs is basic instructions for Christian living with wisdom, straight up. Just
it's kind of like if you want instructions on how to discern politics.
Yeah.
Proverbs is there for you. Speaking of Solomon, though, this weekend is kind of a big one for Sons of Solomon.
Yes, it's the muster. Mm-hmm. Gathering together a number of guys to go downtown in Rockford, stand beside a Memorial Day parade and support the troops, absolutely in that regard, but also hand out Sons of Solomon booklets and have some coffee and talk and get to know each other and find out what's going on in their local communities, how they are trying to be Christian men, leading Christian men in their congregations. So,
what time is the parade?
I don't know, but we're gathering at 9. We plan to hopefully have a little tent set up there. I'm going to bring my drum if I can remember and sit there and bang on the drum. And you're like, what?
Oh.
It just makes a noise.
It's a man party.
It's a man party. Yeah. Barbecue at our place afterwards. Nope. So, I mean, it's probably a little late for people to make plans, and we maybe should have publicized this on here sooner. But this was the biggest event we had last year for Sons of Solomon. So we're hoping to see a good number of people show up, and you can always find out more at sonsofsolomon.net. There is a newsletter that goes out every week that is filled with good stuff. I don't write this one, but Pastor Ben Steenbach, who is a pastor up in the Milwaukee area, a lot of the content's from him. It's put together by a young man named Titus, and it's a nice newsletter once a month. A bit of wisdom in your inbox. Sonsofsolomon.net. All right, so let's get to some questions here. Because we're kicking it. We're kicking it. So, dear Pastor Fisk, I don't have the paper. Dear Pastor Fisk and Mrs. Fisk, do you have an opinion or can you give advice regarding the issue of narcissism? There are so many self-styled counselors, guides, and therapists posting YouTube videos on the subject, it can get confusing. Is narcissism a reality, or is it just a fancy name for sin? You have spoken about sin curving us inward, and I'm wondering if this is the same thing. Narcissism in its most extreme manifestations sounds quite dangerous. If you or Mrs. Fisk have thoughts on this, they would be helpful, I am sure. Thank you, and most sincerely for all you do, Jude. So, I'm probably spelling it wrong. There you go. We're going to talk about narcissism.
Oh, we're liking these little labels.
I know.
Huh? It's kind of fun.
Quotes. There you go. So there is an excellent book I've recommended in the past called The Narcissism Epidemic by Jean Twenge, Twenge. Probably the most important thing, there's like 2 important points that take out of that entire book. And one of them is that the word narcissism is thrown around way too much. At least if by it you're going to refer to what psychologists mean when they talk about narcissism. So narcissism as a psychological distinction is a type of mental illness that is equivalent to or on the level of borderline personality disorder. That is, you're bonkers. You're bonkers, selfish, can't even see that other human beings really exist. The number of people that are on this level of spectrum is not as many as you would think based upon the YouTube videos talking about how there's narcissistic people in your life. Okay. So that's where we're having a confusion. I mean, it'd be like if I walked around and everybody that was like depressed, I started saying, well, you must be bipolar. Like that's just it's an over application of the idea. All right. Now, that being said, narcissism is called narcissism because of a Greek story about a guy who loved himself so much that he stared at himself in a pond until he turned into a flower because he just had been there so long. The gods were like, well, I guess you'll just stay there. And then there's a flower called a narcissus, and it's a very pretty flower. And that's the story. And it's kind of like a morality tale about not loving yourself too much. So that's fine too. So when you're out in the YouTube world though, and you're running into all these people like diagnosing, like there's too much narcissism going on. You're dealing with people who are like probably meaning well in the sense of recognizing the high level of selfishness that is encouraged in our culture, which leads to dysfunctional relationships because people are unable to see each other. At the same time, many of these same counselors are going to be telling you that the answer is to love yourself more, to spend more time with yourself and all this kind of stuff, which is actually the problem in a lot of ways. So bringing my answer home, I said there were two things to say from that book. One was, again, that we overuse this term. The other one is that there is a increase in diagnosable narcissistic personality disorder in the American populace over the last 20 years. Like the percentage is higher, to be sure. And like, if you're on your phone all the time, look at me, like, yeah, it's going to happen. But I don't think that labeling other people with psychological dysfunction is the path to your own better function, right? So the answer to me becoming a healthy person is not realizing how many of these other people are unhealthy and having a way to say they're all unhealthy in this way. That doesn't mean that there's not a time where you're like, that person's really toxic. Like, they actually just hurt me. That's all they do is hurt me. I maybe don't have to respond to that phone call, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's the other side of this, right? But again, you don't have to diagnose them all with some sort of like label in order to do that. You just have to realize that every time you leave that person, you feel really awful. It's like, well, maybe I don't need to do that anymore. I have a Bible verse to look at, but I'm curious for your thoughts here, Meredith.
Well, I remember when we were reading through Peter Walker's book on CPTSD, narcissism came up because oftentimes people who have CPTSD will be mislabeled as narcissistic because a lot of the traits that they have, right?
The blinders.
They overlap. That's the trouble with CPTSD in general. Like, there are a lot of different misdiagnosable personality disorders that oftentimes psychologists will say, oh, well, you're bipolar, or you have, what were some of the other ones? Was schizophrenia one of them?
No, not with CPTSD. That one's
okay. That's
really
a little too intense.
Unique, yes.
And then there was this one, narcissism, and
borderline.
But then there was also, he mentions that having narcissistic parents causes CPTSD. Do you remember that?
He did say that.
It's not that they are necessarily diagnosably narcissistic, but their traits. And so as we encounter, like you mentioned, a culture where we're scrolling on our telephones, well, think about what Facebook is built around. It's about gathering likes. Twitter is about getting retweeted, having this popularity contest with yourself.
A little bit.
And so how, kind of being aware of how is that going to impact my kiddos, and helping them to navigate the psychological impact that it will have. You're seeing lots of comments.
This is fun. Is Donald Trump a narcissist? So, like, here's the thing. Like, you wouldn't be able to know unless you knew him personally. This is kind of like diagnosing someone on TV as a narcissist is narcissistic. like you're giving yourself way too much credit. Like, someone who's on the narcissistic personality disorder spectrum, you're only going to know that by like living in close quarters with that human being. You're not even maybe going to be able to do that at work. Like, you could work all day with someone and you would never know. And the difference between that and just, that person's selfish, right? So we shouldn't use it to describe people who are selfish. Someone who has narcissistic personality disorder has reached a level at which they are unable to be aware of other human beings being other human beings. And to pinpoint that, everyone's kind of got that a little bit anyway, but that's just it. It's not the thing that everyone's got. It's like this other level of it, wherein there's even sort of an apparent moral contradiction where they're able to lie directly without even thinking about it, because it's not a lie to them. And again, to push that onto, Trump, just because of the last couple of years, is the guy, he's got to be egocentric. There's no question. He's got to be egocentric. You have to be egocentric to be able to be that kind of man. Barack Obama's egocentric. George Bush is egocentric. Joe Biden's egocentric. You don't get to be president without being egocentric. So try, but then don't confuse an egocentric man with narcissistic personality disorder. go read up on narcissistic personality disorder. Again, the narcissism epidemic, Gene Twenge, I think is a good look at this. And the caveat that is there is like we probably should stop acting like we're all psychologists labeling everybody as if we have some sort of understanding here. And even there, recognize the entire school of psychology develops in the last 100 years as a practice of trying to understand the brokenness of mankind. And so its terminology is entirely made up and largely controlled by non-Christian influences. Although, here's a rec for the Mad Christian Mondays. William James, is it over there? It should be just sitting over there. I can't think of the name of the whole thing now. Now I'm going to look it up. William James.
Wild?
No. He's got 2 books on it. One is on psychology. What's the name of the book though? Is it just called Psychology? I should look at Amazon because that'll be faster. It's in the case over there rather than being.
Oh, it's in here.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Just come back. I will find it quickly. It is called Principles of Psychology. There it is, by William James, and you can get an abridged version, which is not as big as the other version, and that'll give you. That's Dr. Kutzrek there. That'll give you a good introduction into psychology done as natural philosophy. That is, just let's reasonably look at how the human mind works. Mm-hmm. But you have this other guy named Freud, and then all the reactions and overreactions against Freud that were about the same time, that has turned psychology into a social science, right? Something that I would just say is a little untrustworthy. And so it's also fused with the pharmaceutical industry. And so again, bipolar being an example of, it's like, well, what's bipolar? It's a number of things, but it's something that they medicate heavily. That combination of things means that we shouldn't just go around labeling people this, since it's basically a medical terminology that's used for high level of pharmaceuticals. Whatever you feel about that, don't call people that, right? And so narcissism, same thing, okay? So as opposed to calling somebody selfish, that person's selfish. Like, yeah, fine. But you see all these people on YouTube doing this because they want to sound smart. Hey, and things like that. I want to go to some Bible. Go ahead.
It's interesting that you mention the psychology about it, because I've been reading books about training dogs, and something that's mentioned is how much just by taking one thing or one portion of psychology has influenced even dog training philosophy. So we get the idea of training your dog with food from Pavlov, and like the bell. So if a dog hears a bell every time it's fed, then eventually when you ring a bell, it will start salivating.
It associates the food with the bell.
So people have then used that as a training technique. But the problem is then you start getting kind of zombie dogs. Like you're essentially making your dog an unthinking dog. And so another idea is, instead of telling them to do something and then giving them a reward, you reward them when they do the thing that you want them to do. So if your dog just naturally is sitting down, then you give them a reward for being sitting, in the sitting position. It takes a lot more awareness as the owner, because you actually have to live with your dog. You can't just be like, okay, well, you robot dog, do what I want when I want it to be done.
Right.
You have to kind of interact with them on a very regular basis so that they can then be rewarded when they just naturally do their thing. It's tough, but anyhow, go ahead.
No, that was really good. I had a couple of thoughts there, and one of them was just how fortunate I am to have a wife who is smart, because it's just really helpful.
Well, the reason I'm even saying this is, thank you, that's very kind. The reason, though, that I'm saying it is that we have taken just one little thing out of psychology, this idea that there are narcissists out there, and then we apply it in this very broad and general way, and that does harm.
Yeah.
The way that having a zombie dog can do to harm.
As opposed to trying to understand the selfishness of human nature and where it belongs in theology, we turn to a science mythology as a way of keeping the evil far away, right? Rather than recognize the evil is generally within. So I thought that Romans 2 kind of gave a nice description here of, and this is what human nature is, right? That we are self-seeking and do not obey the truth, right? Paul is describing what happens that brings about wrath, what happens that brings about judgment day. And he's not trying to say some people do this, not others, although he certainly is warning that there are those who act out on these things more than others, and that the more one acts out on evil, the more wrath is building up and sure to come, whether that is in this life or in the next. But again, he defines unrighteousness. The word unrighteousness is defined as self-seeking and not obeying the truth, right? Not holding to the truth. So to be righteous is to be not self-seeking and truth-believing. To be unrighteous is to be self-seeking and lie-believing. Right? And that's his definition there. So I think that kind of gets to the idea. I guess that's the only one I got there. There's more that we're going to talk about when it comes to the wickedness of mankind in these latter days. That'll be coming from other texts in a little bit here. But there's not like a biblical answer to the question of narcissism. Oh, but I did have that one. Oh, I had that note. I didn't even write it down as a thing here. So maybe we can find this. Ephesians 4:22 and following. We can look at this for a second. So this is like the Christian antidote to selfishness, which is, first off, you're saved by grace through the work of Jesus Christ, who has achieved this on the cross for you. He has bought you. He has paid for you. And more on that in a few moments too. What if he didn't buy me? Yes, he did. More on that in a moment. But then knowing Jesus, because you do, he's your King. He's your Lord. He has changed the dominion in which you dwell by announcing that he has risen from the dead to you. And since you don't reject that, it means the Spirit's working on you to pull you into believing it. Since that's true, it is good to, I'll get this part up too. Since that's true, this I say therefore, and testify in the Lord, that you should no longer walk as the rest of the Gentiles do in the futility of their mind. Right. So since it's true that Christ is your Lord, you shouldn't act like everybody else. Not just act, walk. And there's a difference between acting and walking, because this is about like, how can I believe something and not do it, right? Like I'm going to do what I believe. What I believe is going to impact what I do. When I walk according to what I see, right? So now that you see differently, you're going to walk differently. And the way you're going to be different is you're not going to have a futile mind, empty, useless, selfish, right? Having their understanding darkened, this is the way it used to be for you without Christ, this is the way it is for everybody. Understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them, because of the blindness of their heart, who, being past feeling, have given themselves over to lewdness, to work all uncleanness and greediness. That's not narcissistic personality disorder, that's everybody. Narcissistic personality disorder is probably like harder to live with than even this. And that's, again, like getting into the realm of psychology as a means of trying to diagnose your daily life, probably not that helpful at the end of the day. This more helpful, right? Just kind of seeing the nature of mankind, recognizing that sin is curved in on self, and then striving to not be like that yourself, rather than trying to point out how everybody else is like that, right? This is not how you have learned Christ. Verse 21, if indeed you have heard of him and have been taught by him, as the truth is in Jesus, that you put off, this is the verse we really wanted to look at here, you put off concerning your former conduct the old man, which grows corrupt according to the deceitful lusts, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and that you put on the new man, which was created according to God in true righteousness and holiness. Now, this is one of those places where like Lutherans like, but wait, did he just say I have to put on my Christianity? I thought I was saved by grace alone. You are Okay. So now that you're saved by grace alone, though, you're not a lump on a log. You're a human who's had a mind that's been renewed. And with that renewed mind, you are freed now to actually use it on purpose rather than be submissive to the old mind, which is futile and ignorant and greedy and lewd. You can actually set that aside. I had this conversation with another young man in the area just this week about how do you deal with the temptation of lust? Okay. And like I'm walking around and like, do I just like avert my eyes and just never look at anybody and like just make everyone wear, whatever, just never look. And it's like distinguish between the temptation, which is a sin. Like, oh, look, I in fact have this evil thought in my head, and acting on it. Confront it as you have it, call it what it is, and don't let it out of your mouth or into your hands. As opposed to this battle that I'm somehow going to purge my heart so I'll never be tempted again. That's what most people are trying to do. They never have the temptation. No, temptations are sure to come, and woe to them by whom they come. But what is your task as a Christian in temptation is to put off the old man and put on the new. Say, oh, my old man says I should do this thing, but whoa, that's like really evil. Not going to do it. That's it right there. Renewed mind fighting back against the evil that arises from within, right? And so the non-Christian, they just got that old man. That's all they got, right? For us as Christians, we're to fight against that. Yeah? That's not what the Bible says about narcissism. Like the Bible doesn't talk about narcissism. It talks about the old man and the new man. Is there such a thing as narcissistic personality disorder? I think there probably is. Yeah, and I think it's a very small percentage of the population, although I do think that the things that are notable about its behavior may be increasing due to the use of devices which increase self-driven forms of psychoses. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have a very specific knowledge of what exactly narcissism as a disorder, a psychological disorder is, like what the traits would be. But I'm pretty confident that just having studied Proverbs alongside of you, it has a lot to say about selfishness and how to interact with somebody who is selfish and how to combat selfishness in oneself. So if we take that perspective, as you're saying, that Proverbs offers a good guide.
And the fool, huh? That's the category to work with. Is the fool, not the narcissist. I mean, yeah, like that's really good. Why are we diagnosing as Christians? I'm not talking about like if you're a psychologist and you got to like deal with medications, like sure, but as a Christian, be more concerned about noting the fool and not being afraid to be like, well, that person is. This says a fool does that. That person's doing it. I'm not mean to realize in my head that's a fool. Doesn't mean I have to hate them, but maybe it means I don't walk with them. I certainly don't listen to their advice, right? Because they're fools, right? Much more helpful and obvious. I mean, just read the book. Tell you about it. Of course, I would love for Proverbs to be translated so that you can distinguish between the fools in Proverbs, and maybe someday that'll be my life work, but I'm not there yet. All right, let's move on. No Name says, peace of the Lord be with you, Rev. Meridith. Spelled your name right, too. How should we respond to or deal with people that are shocked by the evil that happens in the world every day? I can see the approach of the collapse of society and that the evil is likely to get worse and more frequent, and I feel like most people don't believe it is even possible. I feel you there. Is there any comfort men can give to women who are naturally going to be affected to a greater degree by the horrors of evil around the country? P.S. Obvious first step would be to stop the white noise, but not everyone understands how powerful white noise is. So the real question here is like, how can men prepare in such a way to protect the women? And how do we learn to deal with the evils that are around us without being thrown off by them? I'm going to take us straight to 1 Peter 4 just to start us off here. Beloved, do not think it strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened to you, but rejoice to the extent that you partake of Christ's suffering, that when his glory is revealed, you may be glad with exceeding joy. So, that, see, now I'm like wanting you to talk.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that was my invitation.
No, well, I just wanted to get words on the
my thought
page.
is that Daniel in chapter 2, he prays for wisdom, and that prayer is so, I appreciate the prayer quite a bit. It's chapter 2, verses 20 through, well, it ends at 23. But 20 through 22 kind of help us to get into the mindset of, help me be wise in this moment as you desire to do a laudable thing, no name, that's so caring and kind to see that I'm assuming you're a boy, but your vocation as protector is going to be called upon in a greater way if what is being predicted actually comes to fruition. Yeah, that's good. I'm now looking something else up. There it is. James 1, verse 5. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. All right, so James says, ask for wisdom, and you will get it. And now I'm trying to remember, is it Proverbs? Where is it? 28. See, I have shown you excellent things. I'll just look it up here, maybe find it that way. But like, no, that's not where it is. 22. I'm hearing the puppy cry and whine. I'm curious if he needs to go out, so I might have to cue in some.
Go for it.
Puppy caretakers.
Go for it. Let me get rid of you on the screen here, and we will do that. So like, Proverbs 22, under the sayings of the wise. Incline your ear and hear the words of the wise, and apply your heart to my knowledge. For it is a pleasant thing if you keep them within you. Let them be fixed upon your lips, so that your trust may be in Jesus. I have instructed you today, even you. Have I not written to you excellent things, of counsels and knowledge, that I may make you know the certainty of the words of truth, that you may answer words of truth to those who send you? So, I mean, asking Jesus for wisdom is the first step in dealing with evil. The reason why Sons of Solomon encourages you to pray the Psalms and read the Proverbs is because over time, it will renew your mind in Christ. We just talked about putting off the old man, putting on the new, and about facing temptation in real time with a self-control that is empowered by the Word of God, right? And I'm not saying, again, that should never be heard as like you're not going to be tempted, like as if you're not going to have the evil inside. You're going to have the evil inside. You're trying to stop the evil from getting out. And so when evil is done to you, your own response of evil is the normal thing for men to do, evil meeting with evil. Jesus teaches us to meet the evil with good. The Psalms and the Proverbs as words for bringing that wisdom of the Spirit into you day by day, over time, as a capacity that builds and builds and builds, like flexing a muscle. It will make you wise unto facing the evil that is around you. It will give you the Spirit directly. Like by that I mean like the Holy Spirit will inhabit you according to these words when they're understood to be the words of Jesus. If you just read the Psalms and the Proverbs by themselves without knowing who Jesus is, what he's done, or any of the New Testament, I would contest that you're going to miss the point, although you're still going to get really wise and believe in a God who's for you. You're going to miss the ultimate reality. But those words are powerful by themselves. That's why the Jews still use them. Yeah. But now we have them with the name of Christ. So when you read that this is not just anyone, that your trust is going to be in Jesus Christ, right? Not just some unnamed God, yeah? That you are then being instructed with excellent things. And those excellent things, because they are the almighty word of God, I mean, Lutherans, we swear, we're like, word and sacrament, the word of God is powerful. And then we set it aside and never use it. Or we only use it to dogmatize things, as opposed to like, become wise. The wisdom will open your eyes to be able to deal with the needs of your present. And mostly through trusting Jesus to be in charge of all of it, right? To know that he's the one who has the salvation set in place, to know that he's the one who's going to work things out. So that, again, if you make a decision that you think is a bad decision because the results turn out less than you want them to turn out, he still plans to use that for your good. We're going to talk about Joseph as an answer to a different question here in a little bit, but like that's exactly it. We mean it for evil, he means it for good. So, how do you deal with the evil that's in the world? Well, you don't need all the news all the time. What you need to know is what's really going on in your town, in your city, in your street, to be as involved as you can with things that really impact your life. Now, don't get me wrong. Like if they make certain things illegal across the nation so you can no longer defend your neighborhood, that's an issue. But what can you do about that? Not a lot. But you can do things about your neighborhood, right? And so in terms of then your family, I think the answer is to prepare before things go bad, right? So on the one hand, you want to be talking to your family, especially if you're leading the family, about these things. I have not hidden from my children monkeypox, right? Neither have I told them we should be afraid of monkeypox. I've told them there's a story. There's a story out there, and they're maybe going to use this story to do some stuff. And so I just want you all to be ready that like life isn't necessarily what it was pre-2020 just because for a moment it feels like it is. And so how do you prep for that without giving them all the news so that they freak out and run around with, in constant anxiety? The goal of giving them the news is to help them like set it aside actually and not have it dominate them anymore, to have it be something that they can gradually learn to just kind of, that's over there. That's over there. That's over there. Yeah. The man's job, if he's got a job, is to remain calm. I'm not claiming I'm good at this one, but I think that's also the answer to your question though, right? So the man's job in the face of evil is to remain calm. It's not that the woman can't remain calm, but there's a chance she doesn't. And especially if she's not remaining calm, it's the man's job to remain calm and to take intentional steps to do good for the sake of all, even if it means getting hurt. How do you prepare? I don't know. Pray. Seek wisdom again, like we were just saying. So I think I gave an answer while you were gone. I feel like I wandered a little bit, but
as a woman going through stressful situations with someone who's there to, like you said, remain calm and be a steady, just a steady anchor as I face something that's scary or challenging, that's very helpful. It's also nice to have to be held when I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
I don't need somebody. This is actually from Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. And I believe it to be true because I see it in my own self. When I'm sick or when I'm stressed, I don't necessarily need to be left alone. Oftentimes men do. They need to be left alone so that they can process the scenario. As a woman, I actually just need a hug. Oftentimes that will be all I need is that strength wrapped around me in a very physical way, not demanding anything of me, but purely giving me a tangible protection so that I can feel that I'm not alone.
Kids need that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Puppies need that too.
They do.
Actually.
They do.
Yeah.
So physical presence is important. Calm demeanor is important, but also a reminder of this isn't the end.
Yeah.
You know what? This isn't the end. This isn't what we're living for. We're baptized into Christ. and we're going to be in paradise together, come what may.
The opening of Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath, I don't know that I recommend reading the whole book. It's a good book, apparently. I read it once a long time ago. I know he wasn't a Christian. He had some issues.
Yeah.
The opening paragraph or two is unbelievably good. Like that's all you need, honestly. And for your question, if go find a copy and just read the first paragraph or two. The men didn't break. He captures it. He captures what you're after as the essence of man. And so here's where, like, what's really going on is they're stripping the essence of man out of us via toys and deceptions. And so pray for wisdom and then trust that you were made a man by God. If you're a man, you're made a man by God, and they actually can't take it away from you. They can't. They can poison you. They can do all sorts of things to poison you, but the manhood's there. And then what Christ does is he redeems the man. He buys you back, right? And so rather than trying to activate some sort of total control, rather than going out, and we're going to talk about prepping here in a bit too, but going out and trying to prepare for everything, like, instead start with trusting that God has the whole thing well under control, no matter how much you have prepared. It doesn't mean don't prepare. It just means start with knowing that God has the whole thing under control. And so being a man who can say that, believe that, and act on that will be what the women need through this. I had another Bible verse that might have fit with the whole narcissism thing, because I wanted to talk about evil men, but this question's about evil, right? Not being surprised when the fiery trial comes upon you. This is 2 Timothy, starting in verse 13, then we're going to jump back to the start of the chapter. Evil men and impostors will grow worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. That this is what we are to expect. Not a progressive movement toward a perfect society, a Hegelian dialectic in which we go back and forth until eventually we reach the pinnacle utopia. That is not what we are to expect. We expect evil men and impostors to get worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. Notice how they're deceived by themselves in that sentence. They're deceiving and being deceived. It's one big pile of confusion. In the last days, perilous times will come, for men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control. I mean, his list goes on, and when he makes these lists, like, this isn't like a list of sins. It's a well-rounded description of sin, what sin is like: headstrong, haughty, lover of pleasure, form of godliness, denies its power. From such people, he says, though, turn away. And this is where, again, so Christians, I know Lutherans were like, well, but justification's by grace. Yes, it is. It is. And for the fact of, because of our justified stance, because we stand under grace, we should listen all the more surely when he says, turn away from evil people. Like, okay, cool. Thanks, Jesus. Since you saved me, I'll listen to you now. This does not need to become some sort of like second use of the law accusation where you're like, well, how much have I turned away from other people? Of course, I failed today and turned away from bad people as much as I could. I have to repent. Like that, we're talking about psychoses. Jeez. Like, no, you don't have to judge your heart on this. Just hear it as it's wise to not go follow evil people now that you've been freed from it. The sort who creep into women's households, make captive gullible women, led away by various lusts, learning, never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. It sounds like Lutheran sometimes too. Oh.
I'm not really sure how we can read that and then say that we need to separate our politics and our religion.
We left that one. We
I
set
know.
that aside.
I know. Just bringing it all
just
home.
Poking the right in the eyeball. Yeah. This sort creep into households and make captives of gullible women, loaded down with sins. That's like the definition of a politician, right? So, aren't we to
turn away from them,
right? Yeah.
So even if,
but someone will say, well, but your political party's got evil people in it too. And it's like, okay, not really about political parties. Although right now it does seem there's a regime more than any parties, and the parties kind of are split, and there's space in one of the parties where a bunch of people are like, let's stop the regime from being tyrannical. So that's just out there, right? It doesn't make all the people in that party right. Like,
Yeah.
I get it. I get it if you don't like our politics. Fine. But the issue is you have to be involved in your city. You have to. And you have to turn away from evil men, and you have to try to stop them. And when you realize that all the politicians are evil men, well, then you need to get into politics.
Well, and let's think about it this way, though. Let's take it away from politics for a minute.
No, we started yelling about it. It's time now.
So, say that you have a music artist that you love, and you follow them from the beginning of when they become famous, and then that person starts to promote things that aren't helpful, that are evil.
Yeah.
You don't have to stop listening to them. It's not going to make it so that you are, in a higher place in paradise or have a bigger crown or anything like that. But their worldview is going to filter down through what they do, through their music. And so you're going to end up with their words in your mouth as you sing along, and it will impact you. And so we are free to listen, but should we? Like that's something that that I find really interesting and a little bit convicting. You know?
Yeah. I mean, there's a fine line. Like, can you listen to a song by someone who used to be cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they used to be
when they were singing that
filled
song
with integrity. Yeah.
And
or do you have to throw it out because they did this or that?
Chances are their worldview at that time is going to shine through what that song says. Mm-hmm. Okay, can we say this without being thrown off of the internet? Like, can you say a famous person's name? Yeah, we can. Mm-hmm. Like Taylor Swift, for example. Mm-hmm. Her beginning albums she was kind of this young girl talking about young girl things, and with a mind towards getting married and having fidelity be an important part of her life. And then she moves to New York and embraces all things New York. And it shows in her music.
Yeah.
And now she's like old. She's old, and she's like, okay, time to calm down. Time to go back and put on a cardigan and braid my hair.
Well, that's not going to fix it, though.
No, it's not. But you can tell, like, she's going back to...
She's trying to...
You know what?
Calm down. Well, that'd be nice if she figures it out for real.
I don't know that she will. I don't know that her actual worldview is going to change, because it's almost like she's in this, like, oh, I'm going to give karma a try. She's in that kind of mindset.
So what you got me thinking about with regard to the music listening, because it certainly is an open question, like how much of this pagan singing pagan things can I endure for the sake of the guitar solo?
Right.
And that's going to be something that we don't want to make laws about. I mean, I'm going to rage against legalism every time I can.
Exactly.
We don't need to make laws. We've got enough laws.
Yeah.
No one keeps the laws we got. Let's work on the laws we got. Wisdom tries to discern outcomes and set paths that lead toward good outcomes, rather than being worried about, like, is this a sin? Okay. Mm-hmm. And what the 2020 not wake up, whatever you want to call it, hindsight event has shown me about a generation that grew up 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. They're adults in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Things that they said, it won't matter, moved them ever so slowly to where now they're making decisions that if you'd asked them in the 60s, would you not see your kids because the government told you not to, right? Let's just leave it at that. Like, they'd be like, no way, down with the government.
Not. Yeah.
We need more free people and speech
free
and stuff
love.
and all that, right? And now they're just completely moved. Mm-hmm. And so the power of all of these technologies, and I'm going to say, like, letters and books I'm not like discounting those. Mm-hmm. They just don't attack you as much. Like, you have to pick the book up a little more. But the power of these technologies to move you over time is not considered enough. And so what your diet is something you should think about. It shouldn't be just letting the world feed you,
right,
and eating whatever they give you. But that doesn't mean you can't really enjoy, that song or whatever. At a certain point, when the song's like, I'm gonna go kill all them people and like have sex with all those people and all this and stuff, like maybe you should ask like how that doesn't bother you.
Right.
Why are you shouting that?
Why are we singing this?
Yeah.
Out loud?
But I don't know. There's this fine line with the country music between like, we all go with Jesus, but we're gonna drink a lot tonight, and Tip It Back, just a good example of a song. It's about drinking, like, and but it's not. Also, it's about hanging out with friends, and
it's about rocking on your rocking chair.
So the line is a gray line, and that's the point. You shouldn't make laws about this. What we want to do though is learn to be wise and discern what our mediums are telling us, and not let the medium get between us and what we really believe and want to believe. Put on the new, put off the old. All that.
I remember when I was a little girl and authority figures would tell me, oh, it's just pretend, when I would be distraught or troubled by something I had watched on television or a movie. And that kind of, like you were saying, flippant, like, it's not going to impact me attitude is biting us in the rear end right now. And so it's just time to be like, okay, well, you know what? It is going to impact me. And so how much do I want to let it? Yeah. You're free to make that choice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Just don't think you're stronger than you really are.
I have been increasingly amazed by how much, for young minds, reading influences them. Like, that sounds so, okay, Meridith, wake up, smell the coffee. That's very yesterday news. But when I was dealing with our preteen recently, I realized, what you're feeding yourself isn't giving you a good model for how to speak respectfully.
Yeah. What goes in comes out.
The books of today's era do not model kindness in how we speak. And so even though this child was wanting to say positive things, it was coming off sassy, it was coming off disrespectfully, and it was coming off arrogant. And so if we want to try to think that things aren't impacting us, we just need to take a little bit of a look around. They're very much so impacting us. And our children are so easy to read and analyze as far as like, how is it impacting us?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Because they're so they're not pure. I want to say pure, but it's not pure.
Well, monkey see, monkey do, and you can watch it. You're like, oh, monkey's watching it and they're doing it. Oh, monkeys. Oh, what? Let's stop watching that.
So if your child's like, wow, that show really terrified me, it's like, oh, well, let's take a step back. It's maybe not the child. Maybe the show is actually terrifying. Maybe they're just not callous to the world yet.
Your point about just conversation, though, like, I mean, if they are not given a model of how to say things, then the only model they have is where they're seeing other things said, and maybe they're reading it, and then that is what they will talk like. And I mean, I know the things I like least about the way my kids talk are the way I talk, probably, right? And so, of course, that's combined with what other mediums they're getting in. But yeah, I mean, this is from the start. I love the Harry Potter series. I really enjoyed it, but from the start, my biggest problem is Harry is kind of a jerk. His friends are jerks. They're all rude. They're all relativist, moralist, non-moralists, and like they do not give you a model of real kindness.
Right.
Certainly that one family, the redhead family, like they all love each other and they're in their house and they are friends in their house.
Weasley.
But they're always just the modeling just isn't there. And it's not that like everything has to always be modeling all the time. It's not that we can't have real representations of what life is really like, but like your kids need modeling. They need some good modeling. And if you're not going to give them any, then you're going to get what you gave them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We could talk more about that, but the question is not really about raising kids. So we're going to move on to this one a little longer here. Hey, Rev Fisk, could you discuss discerning whether to pursue pastoral ministry? While helping me with my biblical Greek study, my pastor asked me if I was considering going to seminary. I said I don't think so, and he encouraged me to consider it, but didn't say much else about it. A few others have brought it up to me also. I did think about it a little, but not much until a couple weeks ago. After Bible study, I was talking with someone who had only recently started reading the Bible and clearly needs some guidance. I'm certain Pastor will help her, but but it just ate me up inside to hear the view she had of the Bible and herself. She told me she didn't feel like she understood the simplest things without having it explained, and how maybe she wasn't even a Christian because of it. That's really sad. I did my best to encourage her, but my heart broke instantly and all of a sudden. I went from wanting to find out as much as I could know and learn from the scripture and of theology for myself and my family to wanting to share it with everyone, especially the promises and comforts to be found in Christ and his word. Everything I have found on the subject seems to say you should just know. It's kind of mediocre answer. But to be honest, I'm scared. Well, that's actually a good sign. I've been praying about it a lot and reading the pastoral epistles, but still feel frozen. Well, that's good wisdom right there. Read the pastoral epistles, and the fact that you feel frozen kind of tells you like you're not really ready yet. Then, like you would, well, you could push yourself through it, and then you would be. But like the fact that you're feeling frozen on the matter means you're not ready. So, which makes me feel like it's not for me. Well, yeah, exactly. I try not to put too much trust in my gut, and every time I think that, a few scriptures keep popping into my head. Every time I think that, scriptures keep popping in my head. Romans 10, we're going to look at that. John 9, Luke 9, we'll look at Luke 9. Then I can't put it away, and I start the whole process over again. Any advice would be appreciated. I do have a family, so I'd also love to hear Mrs. Fisk's thoughts as well. So before we bring her back, oh no, I lost it though.
Romans.
No. We'll go there, but just advice on whether or not one should be a pastor. That was it. If you're going to be a pastor, you won't be able to not be a pastor. So like, comfort yourself with that. Like, slow down. No rush, man. Like, unless Jesus comes back and then you're not supposed to be a pastor, like, you'll get there. It's going to happen. You got all sorts of life ahead of you, right? So it's not a race to be a pastor. I understand that there's a lady in Bible study who like really could use some encouragement, but guess what? You did that, not as a pastor. Like being a knowledgeable Christian in the Bible study who talked to someone about the Bible after the Bible study, like super useful. I want more of that in my church. I don't want to be the only guy with answers. I hate that idea that I'm an expert in the Bible. What I should be is a public speaker of the Bible, but not the only person who knows it. You're studying Greek. That's great. I think we need more laity that can read Greek and Hebrew. I don't know why we wouldn't use like the most intellectual time in history, which is over already, unfortunately, to have taught our laity to actually go back to the real Bible, and instead we just hid it from them and like sold them rock and roll. Like, hello. So what you're doing is great. Now, does that mean that you shouldn't consider it? Absolutely. Any man of godly standing should probably be asked the question at some point, hey, have you ever thought about this? And your answer was no. Your answer was no. So like, don't let others push you into this at all. Now, you keep thinking about it, which means like, oh, well, maybe, right? But this idea that you're just going to kind of know off the top of your head, I just remembered I have this little words I can put up here. The idea that you're just going to know off the top of your head, that's nonsense. That's juju. That's magic, okay? There's not going to be a burning in your bosom that's like, well, I know I'm supposed to be a pastor. Like, if you had that, that's fine. That's you. That's not God. And it's great that you desire a noble task so much. I really wanted to be a pastor. Great. God bless you. But that is not a universal reality. It is not the thing to look for. The thing to do is to ask yourself, truly, do I want to? And since the answer is like, not sure, then the answer is no. Okay? The answer is no. Until you can't not. And if you can't not, I keep thinking. Okay, well, fine. Then go test it. That doesn't mean you have to be. To go to seminary does not mean you get to be a pastor. There's 25 of 160 dropped out. We came in with 160. I think 25 were out before we were done. And there's like another 20 to 40 that aren't pastors now. Because it's rough. It's a rough job. It doesn't pay well. Doesn't always work out so well. So like, you can take small steps. And so you don't have to have like all the answer right now that I know I'm going to forever be a pastor. If you cannot imagine doing anything other than talking about Jesus as often as possible, like, yeah, sure. Like, you go pursue it. Check it out. Stop making such a big deal about whether or not you're called. The day that you graduate seminary and they put a piece of paper in your hand that says this little church out in the middle of nowhere with like 15 people and no benefit package is going to have you be their pastor, now there's not a question either. Now you're a pastor. You're called. There you go. Right? So like, it's really not up to you. You can put yourself forward, test it out, and pull the zip line and get out of there as soon as you know it's not for me. Like, do that right away without ever having to decide I'm doing it. You can just kind of offer yourself forward. And if Jesus grabs you and shoves you out of the church, now the text you're worried about starts to apply to you. So I want to jump to this text here of Luke 9 that you pulled out, because I don't think you should be using this one on yourself. I don't at all. It happened as they journeyed on the road, Luke 9:57, that someone said to him, "Lord, I will follow you wherever you go." So first, is that about being a pastor? Hey, Lord, I'll be a pastor. I'll go be a preacher for you. Make me an apostle. No, this is about being a disciple. This is about following Jesus. Okay, so let's start with that in its context. Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes, birds of the air have nests. The Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." It's like, you don't even realize what it takes to be a Christian. Like, you think way too much of yourself. You don't know who I am. You think I'm going to be a king that's not going to die. I'm going to be a king who's going to die. This is about suffering. And he's talking not to pastors still, although it applies. You can apply this to pastors too, but only because pastors are like Christians par excellence. I don't mean they're better Christians. I mean they're public Christians. They're Christians in front of everybody else. Okay? So his point, again, is that you don't know what you're asking if you think you have the ability to follow me. But I can say follow me to you, and you will. And that flips the whole thing on its head. That's law gospel right there, if you caught it. All right, so verse 59, then he said to another, "Follow me." Now he's calling a guy. Now, does that mean that he's an apostle? No. Although, a lot of times. But not necessarily. Again, don't assume this is about pastors. Take it about Christianity first. He says, "Lord, let me first go bury my father." Now it's really interesting, though, because that's what Elijah says to Elisha, and then what Elisha says back to him. It's like, let me go first, say goodbye to my parents, right? And he's like, go ahead, do it. And he kills the ox and all this stuff. So his answer, let me go bury my father first. Actually, it's going to be verse 61. They do the same thing. 60 is, let the dead bury their own dead. Another also said, "Lord, I will follow you, but first let me go and bid farewell to my house." Exactly what Elisha said. Elijah is like, yes, go do it. Jesus is like, completely different answer, right? And Jesus said, "No one having put his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of God." Now, once you're ordained and sent to preach, if you decide, it's not for me anymore, this verse should bother you. Should bother you. Why'd that happen? That's pretty intense. I mean, is it the suffering of the sun on the seed? Is it the no root? Is it the weeds and the tares? Or are you just good soil who just decided that I thought I was going to commit myself something for life and then decided I would choose this life instead? Again, I don't know how else to say it. It should really bother you. Okay? That doesn't mean that everyone who is a pastor, if they stop serving in the career of pastor with the benefit package of the pastor, is therefore no longer a Christian. It doesn't work like that. The point is to convict a person, and the whole section is to convince all of us that none of us are in fact worthy for the kingdom. If you are a Christian and you say, "I want to follow Jesus," and Jesus is like, "You shall not," because he actually says that in the text, and you're like, "Well, I don't like that part." Well, then you're not worthy of him. That's the point. if you're going to follow Jesus, it's about listening to his words and believing what he says. You don't get to say, Lord, Lord, and not do what he says. You don't get to say, don't put a period where God put a comma. God is still speaking. You don't get to say that. You have to listen to what he actually says. Otherwise, you're just lying and you've taken your hand off the plow. That's a Christian reality. And then it also can apply to the pastor, the preacher, in the sense of, again, if you've run because you've been sent and you decide to stop running and get on a boat to go to a different country because you don't want to preach to that city anymore, well, you might get swallowed by a big fish, right? And that can be death, or that can be something that brings you back to faith again, right? So, but don't take this now and make this about how you need to go to seminary. That's like so far away from this. This is about how you need to, what we were saying earlier, you need to believe what you believe. And what you believe should impact who you are and what you do, without having to have you judge your belief or who you are based on what you do. But what you do should be driven by who you are. And when you find yourself in conflict, you're driven back to who you're in and how he has you. And that's why you want to be who he wants you to be. That's why you don't like the deeds of darkness. And Paul's whole list that we just went through, it's not that hard to be like, oh, the deeds of darkness are really awful. I don't want those. Oh, wait, I still have it in my heart. It's true. But I don't actually walk around like being greedy all day long in some sort of active manner, like stealing from people, like trying to one up everybody. Like, oh my, well, actually that's funny. I was thinking about like the biggest piece of meat last night. It was like trying to get the biggest piece of meat out of the pot. Like sometimes you do, but like, it's not as though I'm defending myself a little bit.
This is really funny because our smallest child actually did end up with the biggest piece at one point. Yeah. And I said, and it was being served out of a pot. And it was because she couldn't see into the pot. And so she just grabbed the first one. Yeah. But
like, my point is like, so taking a nice piece of meat off the table that is feeding everybody is not being greedy. Like taking food and not giving food to others, that's being greedy, right? And to see then that the way the world of darkness is active, people are grabbing for themselves and not sharing. The Christian is to be trying to be different than that. And not even trying. You're going to want to. You're going to want to. You're going to not like the deeds of darkness, period. Anyway, it's a tangent from the main topic, but I'm caught in the law gospel thing and trying to like defend like the attack that I'm teaching legalism by telling you the law is good.
So, I mean, could a person read that? You said you were supposed to read this passage through the eyes of just Christianity. It's not about pastoral ministry at all.
Initially. I don't think it's not, because the follow me in the context of the whole book does have implications for the apostles. The apostles are the first ones who are supposed to follow.
Right.
So it applies to both. But I don't think anything in the Bible is like just for pastors. Like even the part that's like a pastor should be the husband of one wife and It's like, yep, that's the requirement for what it means to be a pastor. But you know what? Like every Christian man doesn't get like to not be those things. Well, I don't have to be the husband of one wife. I'm not a pastor. Well, I don't have to be kind and gracious because I'm not a pastor. So it has implications that pastors should take more seriously because they should take everything more seriously because they're the public Christian.
Okay.
Which is, again, like, do you want to have to take everything more seriously? Do you want to be judged based on what you believe by others and how you act and how you talk, right? If you don't mind that, because to you, you can't help but want to talk about Christ. If you're in a job where you're like, I hate my job because I am not talking about Jesus right now. I'd rather be reading the Bible in Greek. Like, then yeah, follow it. But the text isn't about how if someone says you should be a pastor and you don't, you're not worthy of the kingdom. Like that's just not what's going on here. It's about if you're going to follow Jesus, period. Which means read your Bible, pray the Psalter, go to church every week, believe in grace, understand mercy rather than sacrifice, but it doesn't mean don't follow the law because the law is good. Like that's it. Is know who Jesus really is too. Don't create some idol of who Jesus is. Oh, I love this, AR wielding, velociraptor riding, George Washington and Donald Trump hanging out Jesus. Like as I silenced myself.
Wow.
But love the Jesus of the scriptures who speaks.
Okay. Yeah.
I was just painting this picture that you could put on your wall, and you could make that person be anything you wanted him to be. But there's the actual Jesus of history, who we have detailed in the scriptures with his very words. The whole book is his book. If you take your hand off that plow, it will not go well. It will not go well. So that's what the text is about. He also mentioned Romans 10. This is definitely in the pastor direction. Okay, this is a good one. At the end of, or before it gets into this, there's a section about trusting in Jesus. If you confess, the famous verse, if you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Not necessarily an order salutis, my Latin's so bad, order of salvation. So for like the Baptists, a lot of times, like, this is where their sinner's prayer thing comes. Like, so now you need to confess out loud that Jesus is Lord, and now you're saved because you said it in your mouth and your heart, and you made Jesus your Lord. It's like, oh, I mean, that's great that you did that. Like, Jesus is your Lord. But the point here is, like, to not hide your faith, and that salvation has come in order for you to believe that he's risen from the dead. For with the heart one believes unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. This is actually getting at your point earlier, like your body's actions and what you believe inside, they should be one. They should align with each other. Verse 11, for the scripture says, whoever believes on him will not be put to shame. That's his point, is that it's proclaiming the good news that he's for you. For there is no distinction between Jew and Greek, for the same Lord over all is rich to all who call upon him. For, quote from the Old Testament, whoever calls on the name of Jesus shall be saved. Now, the section that you're looking at is, how then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? There you go, without a proclaimer. And how shall they preach unless they are apostled? Right? I'm pretty sure it's apostled there and not pimpo. 2 words for sending in the Old Testament. Unless they are sent, or New Testament, 2 words for sending. As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news of peace, who bring glad tidings of good things. So, this section is kind of a classic. Oh, look, there are in fact preachers. There is this distinction amongst Christians between all Christians and the guy who's supposed to go and proclaim it. Because they are not just those who confess, they're those who are sent. And the sending language here is kind of key to that. Now, interestingly, he goes on and says, but they have not all obeyed, that is, heard the gospel, like believed the gospel. For Isaiah says, Lord, who has believed our report? So then faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. That's good text. But I say, have they not heard? Yes, indeed. Their sound has gone out to all the world, and their words to the ends of the earth. But to Israel, he says, I'm going to skip a little to get to the point. To Israel, he says, all day long I have stretched out my hands to a disobedient and contrary people. So here you have a section in which the truth is proclaimed that Jesus Christ and his resurrection is salvation, and all who hear it and believe are saved. That's the work he does in you, and that is the saving action that takes place. In order that this might happen, he sends preachers, men who make this report, he is risen from the dead, and that has gone out to all the world, even though not every single person has ever heard at the same time. Going all the way back to Romans 1 and 2, they're without excuse. Every person has in fact heard, at least in their ancestors, one way, shape, or form, and don't go too off on that tangent. The point, again, is that many people reject it. He holds out his hands to a contrary and disobedient people. And so now, for you, questioner, what should you take from this? Take from this that if you're going to go be a pastor, your job's going to be to go out, hold out your hands to a contrary and disobedient people. You're not going to go and help people who are going to be like, oh, thank you for helping me. You're going to go and you're going to get crucified. Will there be people who you help? Yes. Will there be people who are thankful? Yes. But what is your actual task? To not have a home anymore. Foxes have holes, but you won't. Right? And so to own that, as you're not making use of your rights in this life as a Christian for the sake of not gaining something in the next life, but because you just want to, that's what it's about. Yeah. Do you want to? That's the bigger question. And your answer has already been like, well, I'm not sure. Well, then you're not sure. Then stop. Like, let it go. Put it down. And the thing is, you won't be able to leave it set down. And so if it continues to be something that just attacks you, then it's like, okay, I can't take it anymore. Now you got to talk to your wife. By the way, if she's not on board, the answer is no. Have you talked to her about it? Like the answer is no, from where I'm at. Right? They're not going to tell you at the seminary they want your money. But if she's not on board, the answer is no. Bad idea. Talk to your wife. If she's on board, it's like, let's try it out. Let's go to the sem for a year. Let's sacrifice all that we have, lose our income, maybe never be able to get it back, never be able to live where we want to live, have our kids have to deal with all sorts of weird stuff, lose their friends. But are your kids on board? Have you talked to them about it? Let's try it out for a year. Hey, why not? What an experiment. And maybe you can think ahead and be like, okay, I'm going to leave myself an out in the first year. So I'll go a year and I can actually drop out. I don't have to go to seminary and be a pastor. I can go to seminary and experience seminary and figure out whether or not I want to be a pastor and leave yourself again a path. You got 4 years of that. The vicarage, which is in the third year, is a great year to decide you're not for this. So the idea that you just have to kind of go and it's all said, no. Go, test the waters then. Test the waters. But I'd say, again, be wise while you test those waters because it's not that easy to go back on some level, right? Like once you quit your job and moved, like the house that you love, that you spent all that time renovating, like you're not getting it back, right? So is it worth it? Yeah. I mean, if you're actually wanting this and you can't not want this, yeah, it's worth it. But that's just where like you don't have to want this. And let me emphasize, is there a shortage of pastors right now in the sense of in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, do we have more calling congregations than we have pastors? Yes. Can all those calling congregations really afford pastors? No. What do we need most to make calling congregations able to afford pastors? Christian men who loathe their Bible and go to work and stay in the church. So like who you are is incredibly valuable where you are without having to go off and like take all the few Christian men that we have and scatter them to congregations that maybe don't even want to be Christian congregations because they just care about their building and their club mentality. So again, like, do you see how complex this is? I hope my answer is shown. Like, I think it's complex. I don't think it's easy as yes, no. And I think that at the end of the day, you don't get a choice in the matter. So it's not like you're going to know inside. You're just not going to be able to say no. It's going to force you through suffering. Man, it sounds like you got a little of that going on, honestly. I mean, I much prefer someone like you who's like, oh, I'm struggling with this. I'm not so sure. Someone's like, I'm going to seminary. I'm going to be a pastor. Oh, yeah. Like that guy's like, not seeing it yet. Not seeing it yet. Did you want to say anything, my friend? We got more.
Yeah, I appreciate what you said about him making sure that his wife is on board before he finalizes the decision, because we've seen scenarios that just it's a team, not a team effort really, but it kind of is. Like you have to.
If he cannot manage his own household well, how can he manage the church?
Right. In order to bless the people that ultimately you're called to, you are a couple doing this. And people will look to her as much as they look to you for the kind of guidance that she's going to give, which is an example. Mm-hmm. And so if she is grumbling about it and not enjoying the limelight that new vocation gives her, then it will impact the congregation negatively. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing. Like if your wife isn't really ready to be in front of everybody's attention, if she doesn't want to be living in a fishbowl where everyone can see what she does all the time, if she doesn't like to have attention in general, then being a pastor's wife is going to be a challenge for her more than just the normal challenges of
I think that's true.
Loving people.
I think if she embraces it, though, the key is like, are you embracing the role of?
Well, if she's ready to embrace it, I'm just saying if she comes into it disgruntled,
right,
and on top of that is an extreme introvert
yes,
and can't stand being in front of people,
gonna be rough.
You're gonna have.
But by being in front of people, you don't mean like up front talking. You just mean, but people are gonna come talk to you.
People come talk to you and they watch you.
Yeah.
I'm amazed by how much people watch me during service. And oftentimes they sit up front, and so they're watching my back. Like, they got my back. You just are on show.
You are the public model.
Yeah.
You are the public Christians.
And so if that idea terrifies her, well, then maybe that on top of her hesitancy is really not a good equation.
Yeah. If you're in it together, I mean.
If you're in it together, seminary is one of the best places to go. Well, that's true.
Who knows?
When we went to seminary, it was like church camp forever. You got to live with all of these committed Christians who were giving up everything to study scripture and live their faith. And so those 3 years of being on campus were just incredible. Yeah. The friendships that we made, the ones that were strong, they still are strong. And then on top of it, you have vicarage, which is an experience and a half. Like, you're never going to be a celebrity like you are when you're on vicarage. It's
true.
Incredible. It's like you get to be
the pet pastor,
cutest puppy pastor family ever. And if you are blessed with a baby while you are on vicarage, well, God be praised, because that is an exciting way to just feel love from other people. Yeah. So it is not all negative, but if you're just feeling pushed into it, it can quickly go south.
Yeah, it's the truth. Not to completely knock our seminaries, although I don't know, institutions are struggling these days, taking stands on conviction. Since your pastor brought this up to you, you might ask him about the special ministry pastor program. This would allow you to keep your job, be trained by the seminaries, distance learning under your pastor's guidance. Now, the trick with that is usually it's beholden upon the congregation that you're in to then call you and have you ordained there. And some people would say, but then we can't pay you. And if you're able to say, I don't care because I have a job and I want to be a pastor, I don't want to lose my job because I think maybe I could be a pastor here and support the church by also having a job. There's nothing wrong with that. There might be something very right with that. Let's say you're in an area where there's a number of vacant congregations that are not going to be calling ever because there's only 15 people. Wouldn't it be nice to have your job now and serve them rather than be sent to them without a job later and have them have to pay you? I think so. So talk to your pastor about the special ministry pastor program before you sell the home, quit the job, all this other stuff. Because even though it has a bad knock for being used by more liberalizing groups, it's not the seminaries that were the liberalizing part of it. It's largely beholden on who your overseeing pastor is. He can make it as good as he wants to make it. You don't get the languages, but it sounds like you're already getting the languages. So what's the deal? Yeah, you're good. Anyway, check that out for sure before you go sell your house. Where are we going to? D. Doulas says this. Refisk Meridith, more pain. My brother is 53 years old and had an extremely difficult life. This is rough. He was active duty Army for 24 years, which included many 12-month tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, where he saw and dealt with some really bad stuff. His first wife died when they were in their 30s, and he has been separated from his second wife for several years. He has never taken very good care of himself physically. He has been a lifelong smoker and had a drinking problem for many years. The past 5 to 6 years, he has been on dialysis due to dual kidney failure, and he has pancreatitis. He does not eat well and has been slowly wasting away and has recently taken a turn for the worse and does not have the strength to walk. I believe he is going to die soon, and he recently told me that he is scared of dying. My question is this: what might be the best way to comfort him in the midst of his pain and fear? I think he is a believer, but if so, his faith is very weak. I have tried to comfort him that dying is not something to fear, since we would be in paradise with Jesus, and his response is that he hopes so. Which, I think that's pretty key, that he hopes so. Let's see here. We're going to talk about comfort. I know.
For those of you who are listening to the podcast,
I'm adding words.
Pastor Fisk is putting comfort on the screen.
Comfort. But no, his response is that he hopes so. I think that's the key thing in all this. For all the suffering that he's got, you got someone who, when you tell him about Jesus and the resurrection, he says, I hope so. Meaning not like, oh yeah, I'm hoping so, but more like, oh, I'm not really so sure about that. Right. And I think that's something to key in on here as we answer this. Now, if I'm going to give a prescription for what you should do with him or he should do, the Sons of Solomon prayers as daily prayers, which you say because you're baptized and therefore they're your prayers and they're always true, and there's no freedom for you to doubt this because Jesus is king. Like, to do that with him in his hearing, on some level. Now, he may 4 times a day may not be able to do it, but to put that in his hearing in the evening, to call him and do the one of them, the dinner time or the before bed one, or maybe in the morning. You start the morning every day with the same one. The pattern of prayer that is given there in the Psalter is a recipe for conviction and certainty over time. Now, you can do that just with the Psalter in general. Just have him read the Psalms. It doesn't sound like he's going to be very much of a self-starter here on this. And so, again, it's not about this verse or that verse is really going to fix it. There's all sorts of comforting verses in the Bible. The issue is that when you talk to him about it, he resists believing for some reason. Now, there's probably lots of reasons why. What I think is most important then is for you to know that you have the right and the freedom to not take his doubt for an answer. So when he says, I hope so, you can say, no, you know so. And when he says, I'm not so sure, you can say, but Jesus is, and that's good enough for you. You can just overpower him with certainty. And you don't have to have it only be your certainty. You have the freedom to say it's certain for him too. This is the beauty of the gospel. No. You don't get to hope so. You get to know so. That is the fact. Well, okay. You won. He just had more faith than before. Before he was doubting, now he's like, okay. That's called amen, right? It wasn't a strong amen, but it was like moved in that direction. So use your certainty with intentional emotion to shove him toward certainty. You might ask the question at some point, I hope so. Well, do you believe in Jesus? Like you said, you think he does. No. Do you believe in Jesus? Oh, yeah, I believe in God. No. Do you believe in Jesus? I didn't ask if you believe in God. Do you believe that Jesus is God? Oh, yeah, I believe that. Well, then you know so. You don't hope so. You know so. And you just... This is law gospel par excellence. This is about rightly dividing the word of truth. It has nothing to do with whether or not you're able to manipulate them in some way. It has everything to do with you just overwhelming them with the word, which is a promise, which is certain. Are you baptized? You're baptized. Then you don't get a choice. Jesus chose you. Deal with it. You'd be amazed for the weak conscience how well this works. It's not going to work with an unbeliever. Like hit them with water. Oh, you don't get a choice. You got to believe now. Like it's not going to trick them into believing. But for that little faintly glimmering wick that's barely hanging on, you promising and promising and promising and promising, it's going to burn up a little bit. Now, if he doesn't believe at all, that's a different thing, right? So what I can't tell you is whether he's got a faintly glimmering wick or whether he's in fact just blowing smoke. Okay, but the solution to the faintly glimmering wick is to fan it into flame with all sorts of promises, and that means not taking doubt for an answer. They don't get to doubt to you. You can go doubt in the corner if you want, but you don't get to doubt in my hearing. I'm going to tell you that it is certain for you. Well, I hope so. You know so. Well, I know so doubtfully. Right? No, you're baptized. I'll see you later. And you come back, do it again the next day or next week, whatever time. You just drop it, right? And that, do you really believe? Not really, but do you believe question? Like you're fishing for, as soon as he says yes, just latch on. Well, then you don't get a doubt now. I mean, obviously you're going to doubt all the time, but you don't get to. You don't get to hold on to it. It's not up to you to get to doubt. You're going to have doubt. And you get to fight the doubt, but no, you don't get to talk to me about the doubt. Not taking it. Jesus won't take it. Yeah. So that to me is the biggest thing here. Then from there, all the verses of comfort that you could read, share, talk about, There's all sorts of ways, like, sending letters or notes with stuff, calling on the phone with a verse. I want to share this verse with you today. I don't know how close you are to this individual. Clearly, his lifestyle and challenges from his past are going to wear on him. This is the other recommendation I have. You might check out for yourself, not for him, a book called The Hammer of God. It is by Bo Geertz. It might start out a little weird. You're like, wait, this pastor told me to read this book, and it's about like weird dynamics amongst pastors in Sweden in the 1700s. This isn't what I was in for. Well, you just keep going a little bit, right? Get past the opening birthday party thing. And like, what it is a nice fictional setting in which the struggle of the conscience that your brother is having is kind of opened up over the course of the narrative. And it will give you all sorts of kind of, if not direct insight, encouragement to stand where you are in the conversation. You heard Meridith go, because she remembers. It's a very, very useful tool for understanding Christian counsel. Not just pastoral care, but Christian counsel. So you grabbed for something right away. You had some words come to mind.
Oh, yeah. Psalm 27 is super comforting for those who are doubting and afraid. Jesus Christ is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Jesus Christ is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? It starts out. Yep. But I think that your advice was stellar, spot on, and inspiring. So we can move on to the next question.
I'm like, there's like this thing about works theology and I'm like, I can't even figure out what they're
Sometimes you have to
to
scroll way up in order to get the beginning of the actual conversation. Because if you jump in at the end, it's like,
yeah.
Don't do that.
Well, I'm sure there's all sorts of fun in the chat room all the time. But
Always.
Let's see here. Trying to look at my notes and see if there's anything more. Yeah, you're be convicted about your answer.
I loved that. I loved that you encouraged the that you don't get to doubt. You can, and that's normal, but
you don't get to hang on to it.
Yeah, it's totally unnecessary because the water didn't miss.
Yeah, well, that's good. What do you mean by that?
Oh, well, my friend. I have this pastor I've been kind of following around for the last 20 years, and he likes to remind us that baptism is connected to the water because it doesn't, and the word is mixed in with that water because it's something that doesn't miss. You can feel the water. You can see the water. You can hear the word. So even if the baby doesn't remember, the water still was on their head, making them wet. The deed has been done.
The promise is attached to a visible sign.
Exactly.
The visible sign is external in the sense of it's not on the inside of your body. You feel it. Everyone else can witness it. Right? Your faith ultimately can't be seen. Certainly you can give a witness and a testimony on this, and people can witness you being a Christian, but not the same way that they witness a baptism. And so, the promise is for you and your children. And when that water hits your head, then the promise is for you. And you can doubt all you want, but you're doubting the promises of the Almighty God. Like, and since you don't want to do that because you want to be a Christian, like, why let yourself have that kind of power? That doesn't mean your flesh isn't always going to be there doubting. It means that you also have this new man that has these words that you can tell yourself, which will comfort you. Fight the war.
Amen.
Fight the war. All right. So here's an interesting one too. Not the last one, but the last question.
I love this.
Making the sounds. Hello, Riff. I need a little button that pushes, shakes the paper, makes sound.
Paper shake.
Raffiska and Meridith, on a recent episode of Stop the White Noise, you addressed a letter from someone whose elderly father was reluctantly enduring treatment for cancer because of pressure from his family. This got me thinking, where does one draw the line between not accepting treatment and suicide? Okay, now, there's more to this question, but I'm going to be like really, really clear. You never commit suicide by not accepting treatment. Like, they're not the same thing. Suicide is you kill yourself. Letting God kill you is not suicide. You're dying, but I could take this pill and save my life. I'm not going to take the pill. That's not suicide. You're dying. God is killing you. Not saving your life is not suicide. Suicide is taking your life. Okay, so just don't even compare. Apple, orange. Apple, orange. Now, does that mean that it's always right to let your life die if you could save it? No. Does it mean it's always right to try to keep your life longer if you could save it? No. Like, this calls for wisdom. But do not muddy the waters with turning having to stay alive forever into the only way to not commit suicide. Like, anybody who lets themselves die, they've committed suicide. Like that's the devil's kind of talk right there. So Wanderer goes on, if I was to be diagnosed with cancer in my late 50s and was presented with the option of taking treatments that might only extend my life a couple of years, but with a lower quality of life during that time, how do I decide between something that might help me live a bit longer and accepting God's plan to be with Jesus sooner? How do you decide? Yeah. There's not a blanket answer to that. What if God, now this is key. What if God's plan is really ... You're going to say more, but the moment you're into what if God's plan, you're on the wrong way of finding the right answer. All right? God's plan will work out no matter what you decide. You're not going to mess up God's plan. Now, can you cause more pain and suffering? Sure, absolutely. But God's plan will then take that into account. Right? So you're never going to mess up God's plan. What if God's plan is really for me to do the treatment so I can be here for some unknown reason, like sharing my faith, meeting my grandkids, etc.? Look, whatever you do, it's going to be according to his plan. And so if you take the treatments and you live longer, then you're going to be doing what he wants you to do. And if you die and you go to heaven, then you're going to be doing what he wants you to do. And it's not like his plan is like etched in stone with such a level that there's no you left anymore either. You're going to make decisions. He's going to give you free will. You have a will to act, but it's never outside of his providence. It's never outside of his control of your salvation. He has written your days in his book. He has put your tears in his bottle. Unfortunately, Wanderer goes on, in such a situation, I'm sure there would be extreme pressure from family and friends to do the common thing and endure anything that might extend my life here on earth. But I've got my share of troubles and tribulations here on earth that make me really look forward to going home, Wanderer. Yeah, right. So like pressure to endure anything rather than die, right? Again, don't confuse that with suicide at all. But to me, again, there's not a blanket answer, but my own approach to this would be, what do I have to sacrifice in order to try to live longer? What do I have to give up? Do I need to give up my convictions? I'm going to take baby parts and put them inside of me because they'll make me live longer? Well, you know what? I'll die. Yeah? My conviction matters more. What about I'm going to give up my freedoms? I'll get to keep living, but they're going to amputate both legs, both arms, and I'll have to be on a feeding tube that goes down my throat all the time so I can't even talk. I'll die. Now, does that mean you have to? No. In fact, you could be like that and have a computer where you talk through the computer and you tell people about Jesus, and that would be God's will. Okay. It's not about what's God's will. Right? It is about you living in full conviction and confidence that your God is Jesus, who is in charge, and that when you die, it will not separate you from him. And so you don't have to be afraid of letting it pass. Again, so going back to what I would do, right? So to me, the line is, how much am I giving up in order to stay? How much am I sacrificing? How much is it costing those I love? How much is it stealing their life from them to try to keep me here? Even though they say they want me here, but now they don't even get to be, right? Because they've got to do something else to care for me. Or we can see each other, but only through a glass pane. I have to live in a bubble, and I'm, and they can never talk to me. We just have to wave in the windows. All right, while I'm at a nursing home. I mean, that's happened to a lot of people. So no, I'm okay. I'll die. I'm okay. Right. But does that mean that's the only answer? No, I mean, if you really want to try to stay alive in that place and you're reading your Bible every day and you're not just, if you're going to try to stay alive at all costs so you can watch TV in a nursing home by yourself, like, I don't know that it's going to really feed your soul. I can't promise you that ends well, right? But that's different than, no. I would like to stay here so that I can see my grandchildren. Like, that's not wrong. Why do you want to see your grandchildren? Is it just to see them, or is it because you're a Christian? And that is an important thing to distinguish there, right? So I'll bring in Meridith back on the screen here, and go to a little bit of Bible before we're done. Just Paul, where he says in Philippians chapter 2:23, he says, I am hard pressed chapter 1:23. I am hard pressed between the two, having a desire to depart and to be with Christ, which is far better. Nevertheless, to remain in the flesh is more needful for you. Right? So you don't ultimately get to choose when you die. You can try to stay alive longer, but the only way you really die without committing suicide is for Christ to take you. And so, being too caught up in it isn't an issue, but he says pretty clearly, it's better to die. Like, you're better off with Christ, but you're going to remain here as long as there is fruitful work for you to do. So if you're going to take that pill that's going to cause all the suffering, but make you live another 3 years, just do it because you believe that there's fruitful work for you to do as a Christian. Don't do it just because you don't want to die or nobody wants you to die. Because honestly, you can give a really great witness to your unbelieving kids by being like, nope, I'm going to die. No, you can't. We love you. Yeah, good. So believe, repent. I'd like to spend eternity with you rather than just a few more painful years. Yeah. Paul remains, he says, because there's fruitful work. And so there's calls for wisdom. There's not a right answer to this. Just reminded that I had a 1 Thessalonians pulled up for that other question about comforting each other with words about the resurrection. So that previous question about your brother, check out 1 Thessalonians 4:13 through 18. I'm not going to go back and cover it, but I rec that as my answer for that previous question. Back to gonna die. What if it's God's plan? You can't mess up God's plan. Better by far to be with Christ. Why do you want to stay? Why do you want to stay? And this person says, well, I don't really. Well, okay. That's not suicide. And anyone who says so is an idiot. The difference between taking a life and saving a life. You do not have to save your own life at all costs.
I think we're in an era where for the first time that's a question.
Magic.
Yeah. The medical industry has become its own type of religion and created this. It's an odd thing because on the one hand, the medical industry is sacrificing babies and not wanting life to begin. But then on the other hand, once you get to a certain spot in life, you must keep the heart beating at all cost. And so that leaves somebody who wants God to be in control rather than the medical industry in this really tough scenario. Can it be okay to just let my Lord, my Creator, be the one who is the author and perfecter of my life? Is that okay?
And it is.
And it absolutely is.
It is.
Yeah.
How to know when the difference is, again, is going to be a combination of what is that medicine that they're actually trying to give you.
It's very situational.
What are the real results you're going to get?
Mm-hmm.
The risks that you're taking in terms of what you're going to give up. And again, integrity is going to matter more to me. My integrity is going to matter more to me than my heartbeat. I like my heartbeat. I'd just as soon have it keep beating into eternity with a flash of light, but there's really not a promise about that. History has shown there's a good chance it just kind of flickers out one day and I go in the dust. And to believe with conviction that's not the end of it. It'll beat again. So then in my 50s, I get cancer. Again, do I take the treatment? What's the treatment? What is the result of the treatment if it actually does get better? what's the rest of my life look like right now? Like, what can I do still? Am I still really healthy and completely able to, like, if like I just kind of beat this skin cancer, I can just go on? Well then, hey, am I completely broken on dialysis with, 3 divorces? I mean, the previous questions, like at a certain point, like if I'm in that scenario, it's like, you know what? I'm good. I know Jesus now. I don't need to stay here longer. And my kids are like, but stay here for us. Well, I might, but not if it takes like making life worse.
Am I really going to be there for you if I'm just, like you said, in a bubble, waving at you through a window?
Right.
Really?
Right. That's not really staying.
Yep. Being there.
Yep.
And I think the major point that you're getting at is there's freedom.
Mm-hmm.
There's freedom in the choice. And so that means there's freedom both ways.
Yes, correct. And right now, most of the pressure is saying there isn't freedom the other way. Hence it's suicide if you don't like take all the drugs. Whoa.
Well, and it's sad to me. This has been something that's been irritating me since we were told to lock down and shelter in place. Like, since when has Christianity embraced this fear of death? Like, what are we I'm missing something, because I thought the whole reason to be a Christian is to know that there's hope beyond this life. And so why in the world am I sheltering in place? Why am I not opening my home to those who have the plague and helping them to die peacefully in their last moments? Like, what? It's never been that Christianity has run in the opposite direction of suffering. And now we are as Christians. It's not that the church is teaching us to do that, but it's not teaching
the argument is that
against what
is
the
that
world
you
is
might hurt
teaching.
people, and so the loving thing to do is not hurt people, and that means not
It's so convoluted.
hurting people. It is convoluted. It is twisted, and they have used your best instincts against you. All of the love which Christianity does have, the kindness that it's taught, has been taken and turned into a lie by which to prevent us from following our convictions, and actually to suck the convictions out from the inside.
Okay, so it's not loving to hurt people, but to love someone who has... So, like, did not the Luthers open their home up
To orphans.
during the plague?
Don't quote me on it.
Okay.
To orphans.
So
They adopted people.
if you open your home up so that those who need shelter, whatever it is, you're going to come into contact with negative things
Yeah.
that this life will bring.
Yeah.
And yet we open ourselves to our neighbors so that their last days might be ones in which they are prepared to die peacefully and in the arms of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So if I am not allowed to see people who are dying, I am not allowed to share that message
To comfort
with them.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the opening the home thing, I think confounds the issue. Homes aren't what they used to be. And like we were talking about in Bible study on Wednesday, like on some level, there are laws against you having an orphanage. Right.
Well, and I'm not using that as a
but they've made
literal.
They've made it harder to do the right thing on lots and lots and lots and lots of levels. But your kind of primary point is, like, they say it's wrong to do this because it might hurt somebody. But we're hurting people. We are. And it's a different kind of hurt. You're trying to prevent an elderly person from dying versus trying to comfort an elderly person when they die.
Yeah.
Right? You're stopping the comfort. And so the whole answer again comes back to, you're free in this, but you don't need to listen to the religion that says stay alone and suffer more trying to live a little while longer. You don't have to listen to that. You can instead surround yourself with as many people that you love as possible and get ready to die.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really wrong to do that. It's quite right.
And what a beautiful witness to see somebody as someone who isn't facing death right now, but to be able to walk through someone facing death with that kind of courage.
Mm-hmm.
What a beautiful example.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is. All right. We got one more question that came up that isn't a question here. And I'm trying to look at our time, but I can't find it. Okay. Yeah, we only got a few minutes. So like, we have a helper who cuts up these longer videos and makes some shorter ones, and then they go through another helper and they get released. And one of them this last week I haven't watched it, but you were doing the talking, and apparently it caused a little bit of a stir. There was some chatter back and forth. Yeah. So what this was the story about Dr. Kuntz's encouragement to us at the dinner table months back to not believe we would be able to prepare enough for what's coming, to stop trying to nail down every possible answer and instead do what's in front of us and be confident in our God. And what this ran into was an argument between peoples over the distinction between genuine concern versus unbiblical worry, sensible preparations versus paranoia, and what the right Christian mindset would be in the midst of the need for survival. And so I think, people on the internet will hear something and then take it to the far end and not necessarily take the context. So the reason to talk about it is just to kind of put it back in the context again. So I don't think we said or would say, hey, food shortages are coming. Don't worry about it. You're a Christian. Like that's not what we're saying. Like, go buy some rice and beans. Go buy some canned fish. Have some water on hand. Got to figure that one out still. So we weren't saying, or we were saying do something, but we were also hearing the wisdom of knowing that you can't actually do enough to stop God's wrath. And since this is God's wrath on our salvation, on our civilization, since this is God's wrath on our civilization, like your prayers to Him for mercy are far more powerful than the rice and beans you went and bought. Because for all you know, the rice and beans can have maggots in it by the time you go to get it. Because that's the way it works sometimes, right? It's about emphasis and perspective. And also not being uncalm, not running around crazy, just doing this, that, and then you built this huge barn, you died that night anyway. So I think that's what the answer was really about. But I want to give you a chance to also jump on it, since you were the one who said it and you said amen to it yourself. And I'll say I think it's about surviving today rather than trying to survive tomorrow, which doesn't mean don't have any plans.
Well, and this kind of goes back to the last question, where you're free to do either way.
Yeah, amen.
I mean, you can go and prepare and try to have all of the boxes checked off so that when something that potentially could go wrong does, you're ready. You can also just live today and thank God that there's electricity in your light switch,
But what if it's gone tomorrow, Meredith? What if it's gone tomorrow?
And then you know what? That's the other thing. That's boundaries. You're going to live with the consequences of your actions. And if that means then you get to, as a Christian, fall asleep in Christ sooner, God be praised. I don't know. I don't want to be calloused, and I don't want to be, I feel myself in a snarky mood, so I don't want to come off like sassy. But I also don't understand like the idea of going to the internet to seek wisdom.
Even though you've made a paste.
I made paste. I sought wisdom, but not for my eternal life.
Yeah.
Let's stop arguing on the internet about what to do tomorrow and spend that time in scripture. I don't know. Is that me being rude?
No. I think it's a matter of emphasis, and you are emphatic about the fact that you cannot plan enough to avoid the wrath of God if the wrath of God is coming at you.
Yes, exactly. So a few years ago, I had a friend come into town, and she was flying into the Milwaukee airport. I have never been to Milwaukee, and I have this subtle fear of going places I've never been before, or I did. And so I remember that 2 days before, I was very stressed. I could feel inside my body this tension and apprehension about just the upcoming trip. How long is it going to take? What are the roads going to be like? I don't even know where I'm going. I'm going to have to rely on GPS the whole time because I don't have a map. And, is it going to lead me astray? So I was very, and then on top of it, Lord, am I going to get into a car accident? Like, am I actually going to make it there safely and back again? And I laid down that night after having this overwhelming and very consuming anxiety, and I prayed that the Lord would watch over me and thanked him for the day. And then all of a sudden, it was like life just got put into perspective. I'm not saying that it was one of those mystical moments where the Lord then, sent a burning in my bosom and I knew everything was going to be okay. No, it was just this realization like, whoa, Meridith, you've been baptized, and like a meteor could come through your roof right now and kill you. Or it couldn't. And you can wake up tomorrow and do the tasks at hand. Mm-hmm. You can drive to that airport in Milwaukee safely with no worry. Or you could drive there with anxiety and worry the whole way and still make it there safe. But the Lord is going to get you there if he wants you to get there.
Yeah.
Like, I am completely in his hands.
And if he doesn't want you to get there, it was him doing that. And he had a good reason for it.
Exactly.
And you can believe there's a good reason and then do what you need to do next. So if tomorrow you wake up and the electricity isn't there and the light switch doesn't turn on, then, well, hey, game on. Now you got a fun one. And Kuntz again, he said this to me after a Brief History of Power conversation a couple of weeks ago, because I was asking him about food supply stuff and what his thoughts were on this. And he kind of said, well, here's what we're doing, this, that. But like, no, really, I'm honestly just prepared to starve. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't see why that bothers everyone so much. I was just floored. It's like, well, starvation takes a long time. It hurts, and he's not like planning to starve. He's planning not to starve, but he also is prepared to face it if he has to, without thinking that means God's not with him or that he is failing in some way that like ruins everything, right? It just is what it is. The whole reason we're doing Brief History of Power is that we both as pastors believe that Christians should want to survive rather than just sit back and like have like a dogmatic philosophy about how it'll all work out. I mean, that is in practice what a lot of churches are doing right now, is they're not preparing to survive. But preparing to survive means first and foremost being okay with not surviving.
So let's be real for a minute. Like, Christ and his church, capital C, will survive.
Yes, amen to this.
Regardless of how many beans and rice we have stored up in our barns.
Correct.
Christian, you might not. And God be praised for it, because that means no more sin for you. That means this beautiful rest in the arms of Christ. That means it's done. Like, you get to be in the it is finished moment with Christ. I'm sorry, but to live is Christ and to die is gain. And that is like what I am hanging my hat on.
It's hard to believe. It is hard to believe. It comes at the emotions. This life is filled with powerful deceptions.
Mm-hmm.
So in the conversation that was going on, there was some talk about how, I thought it was really interesting. So they wanted to use the Bible. I don't know who did this. So if this was you, I'm like not picking at you. It's just relayed to me as the story. So that, well, Joseph planned for food for the 7 years. Mm-hmm. And so see, Christians should be like Joseph and do that. And I don't like that. And I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why. First off, he was given a direct vision to do this. Second off, he didn't plan to be in Egypt. He didn't plan, right? Am I crazy here? Like,
I mean, he was in a pit, starving.
Yeah, he really didn't plan to be there. God put him there at a place where in that moment he could seize the ability to help others. That's what we're advocating. Recognize, though, you're not going to put yourself in that place where you're going to have the opportunity to seize. God's going to put you in the opportunity to seize, and then you seize it when you're there. Okay? Meanwhile, back home in Canaan, they didn't plan. They're Christians too. Jacob's a Christian. Israel is a Christian, okay? And they're starving. And then, unplanned. Oh, my son's king of the world has all the food we need. Cool. How'd he get there? No, well, we threw him in a pit to kill him. Huh. That didn't work out the way anyone planned. So using Joseph as a story about planning is really missing the point of the story of Joseph.
Yeah, don't use the story of Joseph to plan. Just plan. If you want to plan, plan. Yay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because we're not really against that. What we're against is thinking that you will plan for everything. That's what we're saying. Mm-hmm. You cannot plan for everything. You can have the best homestead farm with the windmill running, the electricity to get the well to this, that, the other thing. And you know what you are? You're a good target. That's what you are. So like you just don't know, right? And again, it doesn't mean don't do it. We got our beans and rice. We got our canned fish. We got our freezer with beef in it. You want to come steal it from us? Fine. Okay, whatever. Like that, but that's just it. Like, where'd it come from? Who's going to provide it? And daily bread is a promise God gives Christians. So long as we're here, he's going to keep us going forward. You cannot plan for the zombie apocalypse. You just have to change your life when it happens.
Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we're at time. How are you feeling about all this?
Good.
Yeah.
Sure.
Good. All right. Can I put some things on the board here?
Oh,
if you like what we
words.
do, please support us at subscribestar.com/RevFisk or patreon.com/RevFisk. It makes all these other things that are about to show up go on, like Mad Christian Mondays, a newsletter with a Christian perspective on what's happening in the world today, trying to encourage you to stay informed without getting too carried away by the white noise. You can find out more at madpxm.com. The Hebron Collegium, a one-year Bible school for men, gap year program here in Rockford, Illinois. Go to thehebroncollegium.com to find out more and send us a contact if you are interested in either a summer program room still available this year, a fall program, or a full-year curriculum. Coaching, Bible reading, hands-on. You get to learn how to make paste.
Well, oh, yes. Like kindergarten.
And then some.
But I have a quick question about that. If somebody were contemplating going to the seminary, would that be a place they could come as a retreat just for a week to chat with you about
Absolutely.
that?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, you can make a trip out here and stay in the guest room, and we could have some conversation. Absolutely. Or 2 or 3 or a month in between. I mean, if you're going to start summer Greek, but maybe you don't. Maybe you come in for 3 months and get ready to go to seminary. I'd love to have the opportunity to send you on your way like that. So thehebroncollegium.com. Again, spread that far and wide if you will, because, we're just relying on YouTube right now for advertising. We'll get more as we go. A briefhistoryofpower.com, by the way. You can also find the best podcast on the internet without question. New episodes just about every week, placing you in history as a Christian with wisdom. And I can say that I'm only part of that. It comes from
above.
It comes from above. Amen to this. Amen to this. I think, well, that's all the things I wrote up for. Is there anything? It's sonsofsolomon.net. We had that earlier too. Yeah.
Yeah. Join us for the muster.
Jesus Christ is risen from the dead, and that means you have been paid for. I cannot say this third point loudly and emotionally enough. That makes you immortal now. You're immortal now. Right? So he's not going to be long. In the meantime, the water seals it, the food feeds it. This is Christianity. So don't wallow in the muck with those who have no hope. But lift up your head all the more as you see the day approaching. You found Stop the White Noise with Jonathan and Meridith. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Meridith.
Rock on and hallelujah.
Was that worth $1? Click the Patreon link in the show notes to sign up. Pretty please?